Oh, that's okay. Don't worry about it. No, no, it's okay.
Andrew, are we good to go?
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor McRoberts and Councillor Burrell, you're moving the motions.
I move that the Sarnia City Council move into closed session pursuant to sections 2392B, E, and F of the Municipal Act to consider the following matters: a contract performance matter and to receive the results of potential police service board appointees' police record checks.
And seconded by Councillor Burrell. All those in favor? We will meet in 30 seconds and we'll come back and report back out at 1 o'clock. Thank you, everyone.
Audio check 1 2. Yes, we're live now.
Okay, thank you very much. In the spirit of peace and friendship, we honor the Inishbek of Three Fires Confederacy, of whose traditional territory we are gathered. The city of Sarnia is resolved to implement the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. I would ask if you can to stand for O Canada and then a moment of silent reflection. Thank you, everyone. Councillor McRoberts and Councillor Burrell, can you move the in-camera report?
That Sarnia City Council rise and report.
A report to that we gave direction to staff regarding a contract performance matter, and we also received information on potential police service board appointees record checks. That's my report.
The Sarnia City Council adopt and report at the closed meeting.
All those in favor? Thank you. Any disclosures of conflict of interest? Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Mayor Bradley. I wish to note a conflict of interest with respect to all matters related to Blue Water Power, as my wife is the president and CEO. This includes any matters related to Correspondence 7. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor McRoberts.
There is a delegation from the Mitton Village Citizens Collective, and I do own a business in Mitton Village.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Moving on, Council, we have a lengthy agenda of our public meetings, delegations, and presentations. So with that, I'm going to take us to the first public meeting, which is a planning application related to Kathleen Avenue and affordable housing. I'll turn it over to staff. Staff, please go ahead with their presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're just waiting for someone to be promoted here to speak to the application.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, the Mayor, all the members of Council and members of the audience. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
The city has received an application to amend the zoning bylaw to permit the development of a 3-story apartment building on lands which are the subject of this application. The building will comprise 50 one-bedroom units along with 122 meters squared of office space for use by the March of Dimes. 31 parking spaces are proposed, whereas 75 parking spaces are required. Staff has reviewed the applicant's proposal within the context of the provincial planning statement, Lambton County official plan, and the city official plan, and has determined that the proposed development of the site is appropriate. Specifically, with respect to the PPS, policy 2.5 supports the achievement of complete communities by accommodating an appropriate range of housing options for the long term. Policy 2.5 requires municipalities to permit and facilitate all housing options required to meet the social, health, economic, and well-being requirements of current and future residents. Policy 2.3 requires municipalities to focus growth and development within settlement areas and to support the development of a mix of housing options. With respect to the Lambton County official plan, policy 2.3.7 supports the provision of affordable housing in accordance with the County of Lambton Housing and Homelessness Plan. Policy 2.3.10 encourages the location of affordable housing in areas with access to community services and public transit. Policy 2.4.8 encourages the compatible integration of affordable housing within existing neighborhoods. And policy 2.4.9 encourages municipalities to ensure that affordable housing development is located in areas that are accessible to locally servicing commercial, institutional, employment, and service uses, and in proximity to transit and parks. With respect to the Sarnia official plan, policies 3.2 and 6.1.3 and C supports the provision of affordable housing of different tenures and types by reducing parking spaces where the city is satisfied that alternate accommodation with respect to parking facilities are available and where sufficient transit exists to serve the residents. The property is currently zoned open space 1 under the zoning bylaw, and the applicant has submitted a site-specific zoning bylaw amendment application along with the required studies to rezone the property to permit the proposed development. Servicing is available to support the development. If the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is approved, the county will be required to obtain separate approval prior to the issuance of building permits. The proposed development will provide affordable housing for residents, and it represents an efficient use of land, is compatible with the surrounding area, and will not adversely affect adjacent uses. Staff support the application as it is consistent with the PPS. It conforms to the county and official plans. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. Are there any questions to the planner? Councillor Burrell?
Thank you, Your Worship. My question has to do with parking. I can see why in this particular type of building you would have perhaps significantly less than in regular apartment buildings. But has the our department, done any study to see what the actual uptake of parking spots are in similar type units around the city?
I'm going to refer this question to Mr. Hyatt. Could you take that on, Mr. Hyatt?
Through your worship, the staff have not completed a specific study with respect to that. We do ask the proponents to complete studies at the time of their applications for review, and we take that into consideration when evaluating the site-specific proposal before us.
So did they do a study, do you know?
There is a component in their justification report that speaks to the parking provision, yes.
Thank you. I'll call upon the applicants to come forward. Mr. Farkins, the county, they can come forward, please, online. Councillor Gillis, now? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. You're muted.
I just had a question.
Sure, go
for
ahead.
Ms. Grant.
Sure.
I'm not seeing any type of green space. So one of the questions I had was how close in proximity are these is this particular building to any parks?
Thank you for that question. To your worship, that particular site is within 800 meters of a Tier 1 park with respect to that would serve the community. So it within 800 meters is approximately a 10-minute walk.
Is it on the west? Sorry, is it on the west side of Indian?
East side.
Sorry, the west side heading toward, like, heading down towards, where am I going here? From Indian, you're on Indian Road. You've got this commercial property, and then you've got this new area where you're taking a lot of trees down. So the 10-minute walk is where going across Indian Road or going west?
Just give me one moment. Let me just orient myself to that.
It's in the Lansdowne area.
So it's going, you have to cross Indian Road, correct?
Yeah, through your worship, Lansdowne is across Indian Road on the east side. There is a private park that belongs to the housing community on the north side of Kathleen, almost directly across the street.
Oh, okay.
And then just to the north, at the intersection of Oak Avenue and Walnut Avenue is another municipal park space that would be available to the area.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Does it include, or will you be looking at some sort of traffic alterations to allow people to cross over to the green space if they so choose, or will they have to be content with looking across the street to whatever is there?
Sorry, could I get that question again?
Yes, is there going to be any type of means to allow people to cross Indian Road to get to the green space? But also people who are living here, there's going to be children, and I presume they'll be walking across over to Queen Elizabeth School or St. Matthew's. But in your plans, is there anything that is configured to allow people or get people safely across Indian Road at that intersection?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship, there's no specific upgrades required at this time. I do know that that intersection does have a crossing guard in the morning with respect to school crossing. And there is crosswalks painted on the street at this particular time in terms of at that intersection. But this would be subject to site plan control, future approvals, but at this time there is no other specific upgrades identified.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, I'm fine.
No, okay, I've got Councillor Dennis, I got Councillor McRoberts.
Thank you, Mayor Bradley. It's not even really that far away from Germain Park, really, either. So it's still relatively close to parkland.
Councillor McRoberts.
Just to through your chair back to Councillor Gillis, in attachment number 1, there is a photograph. And if they cross across Kathleen and go down 3 buildings, there is a park right there that's fenced in for which I'm assuming Mr. Hyatt was referring to, that is owned by them. So it is literally 100 steps away. Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Seeing no further questions, I'm going to go to Mr. Folkens and the delegation from the county on this application.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. And good afternoon to you, members of council, staff, and members of the public watching today. I am Jordan Folkens from BM Ross and Associates, and we are the planning consultants for the county on this project. I'm joined here today by Ryan Beauchamp and Melissa Johnson, both from the county of Lambton. We'd like to thank Ms. Grant and city staff for the review of this application. We have reviewed the plan report and support the recommendation to approve the zoning bylaw amendment. Now, in terms of the parking question that was raised earlier, there was a plan justification report as well as a parking justification report submitted with the application. And actually, in this case, since the county of Lambton does own and manage a couple of these different apartment developments, they're quite aware of their parking needs. Now, 4 of those 6 county-operated apartments do have parking rates that are either similar to or less than what's being proposed here today. So a lot of that background information was included in those reports. Aside from that, I think Ms. Grant covered it pretty well. It is near public transit. It is near a number of commercial uses, parkland and whatnot. So people are encouraged to walk to get their amenities and to enjoy the city's parkland. And in this case, the report did justify that it was appropriate, the parking proposed. So we are also available today for any questions that council may have.
Okay, are there any questions from council? I'm not seeing any. Andrew, can you check to see if there's anyone who wants to speak to this application for or against?
Okay, one moment. And if anyone online would like to speak, you can raise hand using the raise hand icon in Zoom. We're seeing no interest.
Thank you. Mr. Folkens, you have the right to, is there anything you want to respond to that hasn't been covered at this point before I go to closing the meeting and moving to a recommendation?
Thank you, Worship. No, I think we're good.
Okay,
Apologies. We did get one interest. Apologies from Logan Marsh.
Please bring the person on, please. Anyone that comes on these public input, this one and the next one, if you could please also give us your address for the record.
Hi, can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please.
Hi, this is Logan Marks. I live on 795 London Road. I'm sorry, Mr. March. Are you speaking to the right application? You're listed to speak to the next one on London Road. This is about Kathleen Avenue and a rezoning there. Okay.
Okay, we can just put you on hold because we'll be dealing with that right after this vote.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. No one else, Andrew?
No.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to close the public portion of this meeting and look for a resolution of council. Councillor Kilner and Councillor White, you're moving the recommendation as recommended. Okay, any discussion from council? Not seeing that. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. And now if we can move to the next application, which is 799 and 811 London Road. And I'd ask Mr. Williams from the Planning Department to make his presentation. Mr. Williams? Please unmute and go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yes, thank you again. Thank you, members of council and members of the public that are sitting in here today to hear this application. The application before you today is an application number 6-2024-85 of 2002. And it relates to two properties, one 799 London Road, the next one 811 London Road. These properties are located on the south side of London Road, between East Street to the west and Indian Road to the east. The applicant is requesting that these two properties be rezoned. The first one being a rezoning from a local commercial 1-13 zone to an urban residential 5- zone. And the second application, which is 799, a rezoning from a UR1 zone to the urban residential 5- zone. The properties as they are right now has 2 buildings on them. And one, the western property, 799 London Road, will be demolished in order to accommodate this development. What the applicant is asking for is that the applications be rezoned to accommodate 2 new buildings, one a 4-story building with 40 residential units, and the second is 6-story building with 45 residential units. In addition to that, the existing building on the property has 7 residential units. As a result of that, there will be a total of 92 residential units being proposed for development on the site. We have looked at this with respect to the proposal as it affects the policies of the official plan, the Sarnia's official plan, the county official plan, and the PPS. And we have determined that this development is consistent with those policies. We've also looked at what the applicant is asking with respect to the rezoning of the parcels of land as it relates to parking. And the parking ratio as it is right now for 92 units at 1.5 rate, which is the city's rate, would have a requirement of 138 units. The applicant, however, is asking for that rate to be reduced to 0.75 for a total of 64 units. Staff is of the opinion that this reduction in rate is in keeping with cities such as London, Belleville, and other municipalities similar to Sarnia, and also with respect to the provincial policy that encourage active transportation and access to public transportation, which there's a bus stop right in front of the existing property as it is right now. We've evaluated with respect to its impact on the adjacent properties, and note that the new buildings will be well removed from existing residential dwelling. The easterly most property will be, the building would be much up to the east side of the existing site where there is no adjacent residential dwelling. It's more of an open space. And on the western section, the new building would look similar to the existing building because of the grade that exists on the property as it is right now. The rear of the building, there is a Germain Park, and as such, there will be no impact with respect to these buildings on that property. As it is right now, we have determined that this development is consistent with our development proposals within the city, and recommend that the application be approved.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Burrell.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, again, my question has to do with parking, and again, we're shorting our parking by a lot. This is, I believe, if I understood the presentation correctly, we're giving approximately half the parking spots that are required, which doesn't make any sense to me. Especially this is a commercial. I can see it on the prior one, but this is a commercial type development. Sorry, it's not commercial, but it is a rental units are a business in this particular case, and that's the primary business of this facility is rental units. And so by having roughly a half, and again with there's no information here that there's been any kind of a formal study that compares similar properties here with other areas in the city, and just, you know, if there's another apartment building on another street somewhere, how many parking units does it have? How many are occupied? Are only half of their parking spots occupied? That's what we're saying, is that all these apartment buildings around town only have half occupancy for their parking spots. I don't think that's true. And I don't know how we can go ahead with all this without there being a formal study to prove out that this speculation is true or reasonably true. We're just forcing a problem on a neighborhood where people are going to be shoehorning in all these parking spots, causing trouble for the neighbors in the adjacent streets without any support. So I will not be supporting this this project.
Are there any questions from council? I'm not seeing any. Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Mayor Bradley. Who were these apartments? Who will primarily occupy these apartments? Will they be seniors? Will they be the working poor? I understand there's a affordable housing element to them. Like, will they be women that are escaping abusive relationships? Just can you give us an idea of who the target market is for these residences, please?
Councillor, if we could just wait till the, maybe it's a better question for the presenters when they present in about
sure.
2 seconds, if you don't mind waiting, just they would have all the information that you need. Is there anything further to staff? I'm not, Councillor Gillis.
Thank you. Just picking up on what Councillor Burrell was saying. I was looking at page 51 of the report, and it does talk about minimum parking standards, which would be consistent with similar municipalities. Belleville and London have already been named, but the City of Sault Ste. Marie, City of Welland, City of Peterborough as well, for lands adjacent to major transit routes and significant community services. So you see, we're not inconsistent with other communities that are striving for the same type of housing along transit routes, and certainly along very close to shopping. And of course, very close to amenities such as parks. So it does.
And Councillor, I'm going to ask you if you could defer too, because till we get to the debate and discussion.
Oh yes, I just wanted to point that out to the rest of council.
Appreciate it. Thank you. If there's no further questions from staff, I will go to the applicant's presentation if they would come forward now. Mr. Davis and Sully and Mr.
Your Worship, I did not get an answer to my question.
Okay. Do you want it from staff or do you want it from the applicant?
Well, I mean, staff are the ones that have this are promoting this, so I think they should have an answer as to what studies have been done to substantiate this, other than, oh, everybody else does it. I mean, it should be concrete numbers we have by looking at existing apartment buildings in the city. I mean,
Mr. Williams, Mr. Hyatt, do you wish to respond directly to that, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think I could try to answer the question for Mr. Burrell. Through you, we haven't looked specifically for existing buildings within the city of Sarnia with respect to parking ratios as it exists. However, having said that, the standards for parking that we have in the city of Sarnia has been in existence for a number of years now, more than 40 years now. And those standards, as it relates to parking in other municipalities, have gone down tremendously given the type of development that are happening, and given the access to different forms of transportation, and also the promotion of active transportation within municipalities. Therefore, the parking ratio that we have, we think are of the opinion that it's extremely high and it should be reduced, and likely will be done so when the new zoning bylaw comes into being. I also would like to add that we have been adding residential dwellings within the downtown area where there's no parking required in a lot of these existing buildings, and where we some of them have to provide parking with respect to new residential dwellings within mixed-use buildings. Given the fact that we've had a number of public parking spaces that can be leased, the city has not seen an uptake in the lease of those properties for people occupying those dwellings. So there is a comprehensive move for individuals who are occupying new residential dwellings to not require any parking because they're moving into different forms of transportation. And as such, that's what we've been using as the guideline to make a determination as to what the demand would be for parking for new residential dwellings. In addition to that, one of the proponents for this development is Vision Nursing, and they have built a multi-unit residential on Wellington Street in which they were, that development was supposed to have additional parking in their existing parking spaces. And the studies have shown that the uptake for those parking spaces have not been what was anticipated, because the occupants of those dwellings do not require any parking because they have no cars.
Thank you. I will now ask the applicant to come forward and make their presentation.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I'll just ask the clerk, if possible, if we could, I do have a few visuals that I'd like to just refer to. We could pull those up. Thank you so much for that. And thanks to all of you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Mike Davis. I'm a partner with Civic. We're an urban planning and design consultancy based in London. Here today on behalf of our clients, Vision 74 and Ohana Landing, to present what we feel is a really exciting new proposal for 799 and 811 London Road. Next slide. Just to give council, for those who don't know, a little bit deeper understanding of our clients, Vision 74 operates a nursing and rest home, recently celebrated its 50th anniversary this year. Vision provides housing, for over 200 residents of Sarnia in a variety of accommodations. Last month, Vision actually celebrated the 5th anniversary of its affordable housing apartment development, Wellington Flats, which Mr. Williams just referred to. That was the most recent affordable housing project in Sarnia. Vision's enjoyed the successful expansion of its campus through the Wellington Flats project, and here they're in pursuit to add more affordable housing stock in the community. At this specific project at 799 and 811 London Road, Vision has partnered with Ohana Landing, which operates a transitional housing apartment building for youth on the property. Ohana has recently celebrated its 5th anniversary this year. Over their lifespan, they've helped 37 youth and 11 children when they really needed housing the most. So I also wanted to note that Ohana is supported by Rebounds Housing Services. With me today, we do have representatives from Vision 74 and Ohana Landing. I know many of the board members are also watching today's meeting. The team, just in general, is very excited to be reaching this important milestone with this project. And it's a unique partnership by both groups to deliver a new affordable housing project on the property. Next slide. This site in particular, it comprises 2 properties, which Mr. Williams touched on. It's got several attributes which we feel make it an ideal location for this type of project. It's a very deep block, so there's frontage on London Road, which is an arterial road in the city, and it backs directly onto Germain Park. Sarnia Transit does have an existing stop right along the frontage of the property. And then it's a central location in Sarnia within a reasonable proximity to commercial amenities at Northgate Plaza, and Blue Water Health as well. Next slide. Just briefly, Mr. Williams did a great job kind of orienting you to the proposal itself. This is the new infill development that will make use of unused portions of the property at 811 London Road, and then the additional property at 799, which will be undergoing full redevelopment. So the plan is for 2 new apartment buildings. Building A is a 4-story structure with 40 units located up along London Road. And then Building B, the 6-story building located at the rear of the property, that's 45 units. The existing Ohana Landing building will be maintained. Next slide, please. What we've tried to do here is to conceive a proposal that fits logically into the existing fabric of this neighborhood. So the 6-story building has been focused at the rear of the property, where we can achieve the greatest setbacks and separation from existing homes along London Road. And then the smaller 4-story building sited along London Road, that's been conceived in a way to have a good scale relationship with the existing Ohana building. In fact, that building, despite being 4 stories, truly will be as visible from London Road, a 3-story building, given the kind of change in grade. As is outlined in the planning staff report, this proposal complies with the city's official plan policies for infill developments in that existing neighborhoods designation. All of the buildings are set back in a manner that ensures that they fit within a 45-degree angular plane measured from the adjacent property line. So what that does is ensure that we're avoiding shadow impacts on neighboring properties during key seasonal periods. And so this project is more than just about housing. This is an initiative that's about kind of improving lives and livelihood in Sarnia. It's going to help meet the need for affordable housing in the community. It's going to be supporting the transit service and the ridership. And then also, like I've pointed out, we've tried to strategically design this development in a way that respects the context of this area. I do want to also let you know that our team, Vision and Ohana, undertook a proactive developer-led consultation strategy for this project that kicked off back in July of this year. The first thing we did was create a project website that became kind of a home base for sharing information about the project with residents of the area. To communicate the launch of that website, our team circulated postcards to 89 surrounding homes and businesses that are located within a 120-meter radius of the site. And then on August 13th, we hosted a community information session to help folks learn more about the project. Through that process, we know we had 22 unique views of our project webpage, so we were able to get this information in front of a decent proportion of the folks in our circulation radius, and we did have 3 residents attend the meeting and reach out directly with questions. I do see that there was an added communication from a resident who appears to have moved in after the completion of our consultation strategy. However, we just want to assure council that we did make significant efforts to engage with the community through the planning process. With all that said, we want to thank planning staff for their help in getting us to this point and for their report today. We fully support the recommendations in the report. I'd be more than happy to speak to the questions that have arisen around parking. If there's questions from council, happy to speak to some of the analysis that was done past completed projects by Vision. All that said, here today respectfully asking for your support for the zoning bylaw amendment application, which will allow this project to move forward. So happy to answer any questions, and thanks again for your time.
Can you speak to the question that Councillor Dennis raised about who are the clients of this building?
Yeah, absolutely. So the specific model of what this building or buildings will be has not yet been determined, but this will be Vision is a nonprofit. Their objective is to provide affordable housing. There are many different delivery models for that housing. One is affordable rental housing. That's on one end of the spectrum, all the way down to supportive housing model. In any event, the rents will be discounted, significantly discounted from typical market rate building. That is the business that Vision is in. These will be geared towards demographic segments like seniors, single parents, folks of that nature who would not have the ability to afford a unit at current market rental rates. So these will be discounted.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Dennis and then Councillor Gillis.
Yeah, thank you, sir. That's great information. I know that locally here, Vision and the folks that run Ohana Landing both have excellent reputations. So I sleep better. I will sleep better at night knowing that they're involved in the project, because I know that their reputations are pretty stellar in the community with what they've done so far. So and thank you so much for your explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gillis.
Thank you, Your Worship. I hope I'm off mute. Yes, I'm on a theme here this afternoon. Looking at the project and looking at the way that the fences are aligned, I'm not seeing access to Germain Park from this project. Was that an oversight, or is there some sort of walkway so that people can access Germain Park directly, or is the reason why they can't access directly?
Absolutely. Thanks for the question, Councillor, and through you, Mr. Mayor. There is a 3 meter wide on the eastern portion of the property. There is an existing pathway there.
That's right.
And so that is going to be preserved. It does form legally. It is part of 811 London Road. My understanding is there is some type of easement over that, which kind of protects it for public access. So there will certainly be direct access through the property there. That will be available for residents to access the park. And I think the other thing, conceptually, I think the drawings do show some fencing along that southern property boundary, although I know for sure that there would be interest to work with the city through the site plan process, which will look at the details around fencing and kind of landscape design to see, how could we even better kind of facilitate access to the park. It's certainly within our interests to have that type of connectivity to the park. I know the city of Sarnia will have some standards in terms of typical fencing between private property and public parkland, but if there's some creative ideas there to really make the park feel like folks kind of like they have access to it, that's certainly within our interests and something that the team would implement.
And I appreciate the fact that you're maintaining the public walkway that comes off of London to it. I know that was a concern for a lot of people. So thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? Councillor White?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Bradley. Thank you for the presentation, sir. And perhaps it's a little early in the game, but I wonder with the partnerships, if there's been any discussion about cross-pollinating opportunities here with the residents of Ohana's Landing and being able to perhaps work together on some programming or even transitioning folks as they age out of Ohana Landing to one of the other on-site apartment buildings. So, I mean, I see it. It seems reasonable and logical, but I'm just wondering if there's anything in the works already.
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I can just confirm, just in chatting with the team, those talks and brainstorming are absolutely underway. This is a unique kind of partnership here. And so I know that the group is looking to leverage that partnership to the full extent possible. So although I don't have kind of all the details of exactly what that looks like today, I do know that those talks have begun, and that is if there are those opportunities, it's of interest to both sides. Yeah.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, we have several people from the neighborhood that wish to speak to the application. Andrew, can you see if Mr. Leachy is there to come on first?
One moment.
Hello.
Yes, hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We can see you. If you'd like to go ahead, please, sir.
Yeah, yes, I'm Greg Lichty. I reside at 812 London Road, Sarnia, Ontario. I lived there for 11 years. Being notified about this, they said they sent a postcard in July. I didn't receive nothing. The information I got was October 7th from the city of Sarnia. And then they put that billboard sign out in front of the property the same day I got the letter. That's all the information I got on it. My concerns are the new apartments, 85 units, they say there is half the parking spaces allowed, and they have to break a Sarnia parking bylaw to approve the proposal, which doesn't make sense, you know, and it is suggested in the comments, the overflow cars could park on Copeland was in the write-ups. Copeland Road is a very busy throughway to Exmouth, no stop signs. It's used quite a bit, you know, and it's mentioned 3 times in the report about parking on Copeland for the overflow, which doesn't make any sense at all. You know, you build an apartment, you should have enough parking to cause all the other headaches for the other people around the neighborhood. And then there was a traffic study. It notes vehicle trips generated by the proposed apartment units would have no significant impact on traffic. Well, it's one of the busiest streets in Sarnia. No mention of the amount of service vehicles traveled on there, ambulance, police, fire trucks per day. No mention of accidents at Copeland Road and London Road. I've witnessed 3 in my time there. You know, I got one more. And can the city current road infractions accommodate the proposal? No. Can Aqueduct, the street parking be provided for the proposal? Talking about Copeland Road? No. You know, I just think that with no parking in this building, it's causing chaos for the whole neighborhood. Thank you.
Can I just get a confirmation that there is parking at the building, correct? It's just not to the level of past buildings?
For the new building?
Yes. I just want to check for you, sir, just because I read something different in the report.
There's something about 64 parking spots at this new building, and there's supposed to be 120. And then there's supposed to be, they have to break up a Sarnia parking bylaw to approve this low rated parking.
Yeah,
from my understanding.
Yeah. No, that's fine. appreciate you raising that. Mr. Davis, can you speak to that?
Yes, absolutely. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So one thing I do want to clarify that on, there was reference to some notion of overflow parking. So there may have been some, perhaps in Mr. Williams' report, a reference to that term. The goal with this project is there will be no overflow parking. We have conceived this parking rate to be conservative, with the intent of accommodating all parking demands from users on the property. One of the things I'll point out, obviously, with Vision, they do have extensive experience operating housing in the city. With their Wellington Flats project, which was a total of 24 units, 21 of those are one-bedroom units. Currently, 9 tenants of those 21 own a vehicle. There was 4 additional studio apartments there. 0 of 4 of them have a vehicle. So at their existing location, Wellington Flats, they have not realized any significant demand for vehicular parking. In fact, well below 0.5 folks per stalls per unit. In this case, we are proposing a rate of 0.75 stalls per unit to provide a additional kind of measure of safety to ensure that all parking demands will be accommodated on site. So there is no intention here for overflow parking on 2 adjacent streets. I want to make that piece very clear. Secondly, around traffic, I think that the intent of the official plan is to encourage this type of infill and intensification directly towards arterial roads. Here we do have a location on London Road, which is an arterial. These are corridors that already experience a high volume of traffic. So as a proportion of daily traffic, this project will essentially be a very small component. The nice thing about this specifically about adding 799 London Road to the project is that the new driveway access will be aligned directly with Copeland Road. So there's no type of awkward kind of offset here. It will be almost in perfect harmony. There will be stop controls at the entrance. And there is good sight lines in both directions along London Road. So from that, there was no safety concerns raised by the transportation impact assessment we completed, or by City of Sarnia staff through the process.
Yeah, anything
further?
I just wonder why they mentioned Copeland Road 3 times, so it's obvious that they want to use that street. So why would they mention it in the first place? That's just my concern.
Yeah, that would have been in the staff report, I believe. Mr. Williams,
yeah.
Can you talk to that? Mr. Williams, can you speak to that?
Yes, Your Worship, through you. It was referenced as it relates to development that exists on London Road, and the issue we're having with regards to some of the parking issues for the non-residential type of uses on the property. Copeland Road has never been identified as to accommodate any type of overflow parking on the property. It was just a reference to have a reference between this development and the development that exists for the west of the subject site.
Yeah, I hope that clarifies it for you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming on. I have Mr. March, who was on earlier. If we could bring him back on, please. After his remarks, I will ask if there's anyone else who wants to come on and say anything before I close the public portion of the meeting.
Hi there. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Logan Marks. I'm on 795 London Road, and I'd like to reject the idea of this development, as I am a first homeowner, and I just purchased 795 London Road. And that is right beside 799 London Road, where you guys are planning on making the development. I just moved in this past August, and last month I received a letter from you guys telling me that you're making this development. I have a lot of concerns regarding the development. One of many is I bought this house because of the privacy it has. I like working outside, and I like that my backyard is nice and secluded and private. With this development being made, it would get rid of my privacy, and it would allow more people to look into my yard and all that stuff, and I don't like that. It's secluded, private, and it's a tall building, albeit I wouldn't feel comfortable in my own home. And secondly, I'd like to I just like the fact that the automobile traffic and foot traffic along my neighborhood would be increased significantly due to this apartment. And as someone who crosses the road into my driveway every time, because I'm right across the road from Copeland, I go from Copeland straight to London Road, and I tell you, it's impossible to get into my driveway crossing from Copeland into London Road. And so if you guys are planning on making the apartment there, residents living there are going to have an incredibly hard time trying to get their vehicles into that area unless you plan on putting lights in that spot. Thirdly, I'm concerned that the security in my property, London Road, which is directly adjacent to 799 London Road. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, okay, sorry, I'm getting off track here. Basically, my property, if I ever wanted to sell my house, I'd have a hard time selling it too, due to the fact of this neighborhood, and that no one buying this house would have any privacy. And I hope you respect that, and I don't want this to be made. And if you guys are going to be planning to be making it, I would at least like for you guys to make at least like a 8 to 12 foot privacy fence along my yard, so I'm not watched, and to put any lights that you plan on putting up away from my house.
Okay, those concerns, staff, have you noted those concerns? If this application is approved, that we could perhaps deal with that through the site plan?
Your worship, yes. As part of the site plan, we're a multi-use residential that exists next to single-family residential. We normally require those development to have privacy fencing. We also require that any particular outdoor lighting be reflected only on the property and not on adjacent properties. So there's many mitigation measures that we take into consideration when we get through the site plan process to address those type of concerns.
Thank you. Anything further, Mr. March?
Well, I want to confirm that if you guys are going to be making this property, that I would have at least an 8 to 12 foot fence, because I do not want my privacy being compromised.
Okay, we can't confirm that today. What we can do is, it's been noted, and I would expect the proponents to deal seriously with that issue when we get. There's another part of this, which is the site plan. We actually do all the work on the site, and I would ask staff if they could contact you and make sure your concerns are directly addressed if possible.
Okay.
There will be some fence to the level I just don't know, but we can do that for you. Mr. Davis, have you noted that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and yeah, absolutely noted that, and empathetic towards the kind of timing of Mr. March's purchase of the property relative to our public consultation strategy. Certainly, fencing and landscaping along the western property line will be key here, and those will be things that will be implemented. So it will be a combination of fencing and plantings. One of the things that we have done, I mean, obviously we're when we look at these projects, it's not specific to any individual. We're giving the same regard for that adjacent lot line as if it was Mr. March or any other kind of owner there. It is something that is on our radar. We have incorporated here a wider green buffer strip. Normally a 1.5 meter green strip would be required along a shared property line. In this case, we have accommodated for a 2.5 meter wide. And what that really does is gives us better soil depth underground to support mature tree growth. So as those trees are planted and grow out over the years, the canopies will, because of that larger strip, the canopies will grow wider. So that was a strategic move there. The exact height of the fencing, that's something that we'll work through with planning staff through the site plan process. Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. March.
Thank you.
Can I ask Andrew, is there anyone else on the call that wants to speak to this application?
We'll just check now. I'm not seeing any interest.
Okay, thank you. So I'll officially close the public portion of the meeting, and I will look for a resolution. Councillor Kilner, Councillor Dennis, any discussion? Not seeing any. I will then call the question. Those in favor? I'll record the vote. Those in favor: Councillor Vandenberg, Bouchy, White, Gillis, McRoberts, and Dennis and Kilner. Those opposed? Councillor Burrell, and I voted with the majority. So with that, we'll move on. We now are moving to the budget input part of the meeting. And I'd call upon the Mitton Village Block Party group to come forward briefly to give their request to council.
Hello.
Yes, hi.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, Mayor Bradley, City Councilors. My name is Peter Pyne. I've come today as a part of the Mitton Village Citizens Collective to ask that the city consider waiving the road closure fees involved for the holding of the 2025 edition of the Mitton Village Block Party. This will be the 7th annual block party. The city did waive the fees last year as well. So we would just ask that they can consider that again. The city and the outgoing Mitton Village Development Advisory Committee have the goal of promoting the neighborhood, which aligns really well with the work that the collective and the block party are doing in the neighborhood as well. So we feel that because of that alignment, it would be a good idea and well appreciated for the city to consider waiving these fees for us.
Thank you. My suggestion to council will be, if they're inclined to waive the fees, that we waive them for the rest of this term.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to every year come back to us and ask for this.
Yes.
If council's so inclined. So council, I'm just turning to the clerk right now. We've got a number of requests here. This one seems pretty straightforward to deal with today instead of referring to budget. Is that probably the best direction?
Yeah, it's my opinion that this request can be dealt with today.
Thank you. So I'm looking for a motion from council. Councillor Kilner, Councillor Dennis, Councillor Gillis, go ahead. Kilner, you're moving the for the rest of this term. Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Dennis, any further discussion? Councillor Dennis.
I just want to congratulate the collective. I've been to the Mitton Street festival every year they've had it. I believe the first one was on Thanksgiving weekend, and they competed with the Brigham Fair. The weather wasn't that great, but it seems like every year they've had it, it's gotten better, bigger and better every single year. And the one most recently in the summer was just fantastic. It was the turnout was fantastic. The people had a great time. It gets bigger and better every year. So just a bit of a plug for those that are watching. If you get a chance, go next year because it's fantastic. But yeah, this was the right thing to do. Yeah.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion. Councillor White. Sorry, Councillor White wanted to say something.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
It's up to you. Go ahead.
All right. If you insist.
Hey, 30 seconds. Let's put it that way. 30 seconds.
I know it's
45
it's a long
seconds.
meeting. It's a long meeting. I'm trying to be kind. We've put a lot of resources into supporting this neighborhood and the economic growth and the safety of this community. And the citizens are taking the bull by the horn and have really proven the strength in community at the grassroots level. And although it looks successful, it is successful. I think clipping its wings a little too early could be detrimental. So I think we should continue to support this as we are hopefully planning to.
Okay. Let me call the question. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Next presentation is from Gail Obadiah from the Ontario Aboriginal Housing Support Services, looking for development charge relief. I'm going to go back to the clerk again. This is not a budget item.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they may be requesting a grant equivalent to the development charges in order to make the development charges whole in the reserve. I perhaps will allow them to speak to their request, in which case they could you could refer the request to the budget deliberation session next Tuesday.
Thank you. And council, in the past, when we've had these type of requests, instead of opening up the development charges because of all that legal stuff and the technicalities, if council's so inclined to give a request, grant a request, it's always been suggested simply to grant the offsetting amount of money versus the DC charge relief. So you're not opening up that whole issue of development charges and bringing many more applications to you. So go ahead, please come on and state your case to us.
Hi, good afternoon. Greetings, Mayor Bradley and Council. Thank you so much for taking the time this afternoon to hear OHS and our request for having the development fee waived. As you know, Ontario Aboriginal Housing Services has a affordable housing development under construction right now at 940 Confederation. And we have 40 units there that will be affordable housing units. And in conjunction with that, we do have the Sarnia Lambton Native Friendship Center taking up a portion of the main floor in our building. And the Sarnia Native Friendship Center is there to provide services, not just for the tenants that we'll have in our building, but also to the urban Indigenous community within Sarnia and surrounding area. I'd also like to add that the Executive Director, Jason Snellgrove, is in attendance in person today as part of this meeting in case there were questions that I may not be able to answer. But Ontario Aboriginal Housing Services is the owner of this development that is going up. And as a nonprofit organization, our development fees have been waived for the residential portion of the building. But we are still facing development fees for the Friendship Center portion of the building, which I understand is deemed as a commercial part of the building, which it is. However, the Sarnia Lambton Native Friendship Center is also nonprofit. And I know they do a lot of fundraising and grant writing and proposals to be able to provide the services and programming that they do throughout their organization. And this is the reason why we were wanting to address this and respectfully ask to have the development fees waived for the Friendship Center portion of the building as well.
Okay, can you, how much exactly are we talking about on that portion? On the commercial side?
It is 40,000, 40,063.90 cents.
And how?
That's what I was advised.
Okay. What about the other fees already waived? How much was that on the residential side?
I'm not sure what that particular amount was. That was prior to me being involved in this project.
That's fine. That's fair. Any questions from council? I'm not seeing any. So what I was going to suggest that this and the other letters that just came in today on the budget all be referred to next Tuesday for budget session.
I so move.
Okay, moved by Councillor Bushi, seconded by Councillor Gillis. All in favor? That is done. And now I do have to ask, is there anyone else, Andrew, who may wish to come forward to speak on budget before we go to the next item?
We'll check 1 moment. We're seeing no interest.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to move on. Andrew, you can bring on the planning partnership presentation on the Canatara master plan.
Can I also ask that a couple others from my team be admitted as panelists? That's John Linton and Malin Christensen. That might be in the meeting room.
Okay. Andrew, can you do that? And then we'll have the presentation. And
awesome.
We don't have Malin on the call. If you raise your hand under a different name. Thank you.
And then, oh, you're, okay. You're sharing. Okay.
You'd like to go ahead, please?
Okay, thank you very much, Your Worship and councillors, for the opportunity to present the Canatara Park Master Plan. I can go to the next slide, please. Council directed staff to prepare the master plan for Canatara Park, and that's because the current plan was done over 30 years ago. There were many conflicting uses. There was a lack of food and beverage services, need for signage, wayfinding. So the team embarked, I'll go to the next slide. Team embarked on a project, on a process that was grounded in, first and foremost, public engagement. If we go to the next slide, there's a timeline that shows on the next slide that shows the sequence of events from when we started, where we had invited anyone who wanted to have a one-on-one conversation with a member of the team, on through public design charrette, on through pop-up engagement in the park, and public meeting where we presented the emerging preferred plan. We had multiple meetings with various stakeholder groups. So we reached out to the community at every single point in the exercise. And on the next slide, you will see a summary of some of the metrics. So 44 one-on-one conversations, design workshop participants, almost 2,500 people responded to our online survey. And on the next slide, you'll see many, many inputs to the master planning process. So as a team, we balance sometimes competing interests and demands and put forward the best recommendations that the team can put forward based on the multiple inputs we consider through the process. On the next slide, the foundation of the plan is based on, first and foremost, protecting the incredible resource you have, which is your beach, and the very rare ecosystems that comprise the natural heritage system that we want to give priority to pedestrians and cyclists, that we want to improve wayfinding, that we want to slow down traffic that's moving through the park. We want to continue to provide the full suite of programmed events and activities. And on the next slide, you will see the the final concept plan. I'm going to walk through this according to the 5 zones that comprise the park. So on the next slide, I'm going to introduce the 5 zones: the beach zone, the event zone, the area around the lake, and the children's animal farm, the meadow zone, and the forest at the bottom. So if we go to the beach zone, I'll walk through these relatively quickly, knowing that the council has seen the report. So on the beach zone, you'll see, I'm going to point out a couple of things, that the intent unabashedly is to protect the dune ecosystem, one of only a handful along the entire Lake Huron shoreline. And to do that, we have pulled back the parking while still providing a full complement of parking in this location and throughout the park. We're upgrading a lifeguard station at B4. We're suggesting a new boardwalk and pedestrian lookout spots along the beach in the effort to preserve the beach ecosystem. If we move to the next zone, which is the event zone, you'll see at E3 a new covered stage and a pavilion with power connection, a new plaza area around E4 for pop-up and seasonal retail. If we go to the next slide, which is the lake zone, you're going to see on L4 and L5, where we're punctuating the lake with specific lookout areas and a boardwalk with the ambition, aspiration to protect this provincially significant wetland. The Children's Animal Farm remains in its existing location with some improvements at the bottom end of it, with enhanced washrooms, with at L18, the Maud Hannah Common, which is giving recognition to the woman who allowed all this to start many, many decades ago. On the next slide, we're in the meadow zone now at the bottom end of the park, and you can see the one thing I want to point out is in that corner, the southwest corner, a new entrance and a modest amount of parking to try and offer several locations that people can come into Canatara Park from different locations. Then on the next slide, the forest zone, where the bulk of the recommendations focus on protecting and managing this resource, providing in the long term the opportunity for maybe a tree canopy walk and a new viewing platform to get people up and overlooking at the expanse of the park. I'm going to walk through really quickly some strategies that are on the next slide, and we'll go through them. I'll just say next. So the first and foremost is some suggestions for a comprehensive and a thorough environmental management and restoration plan. On the next slide, gateways and signage and wayfinding, where we've identified specific locations for a handful of gateways, locations for signage. And on the next slide, you can see where we've canvassed some other locations that are doing terrific jobs providing orientation maps and wayfinding through their park systems. On the next slide, you'll see that we have provided a bit of an illustration of what that Maud Hannah Common could look like coming into the park on the next slide as we're coming in along Cathcart Boulevard and coming past and into the Children's Animal Farm. On the next slide, we make recommendations for pedestrians. You can flip to the pedestrian. Oh, did we miss one? Could you just back up just one? Let's go back one slide. Oh, you know what? We'll just keep pushing ahead in the interest of time. We make some recommendations on pedestrian, cycling, and accessibility, talking about paved paths, marked paths, boardwalks, accessible mats. And on the next slide, you'll see the suggestions specifically to vehicle access and parking, where there is a continuous route through the park, where we have pulled it away so it doesn't go through the parking lot, where we're showing the access on Cathcart into the Maud Hannah Common, and then at the south end in the new access. And then on the next slide, you see that with the ambition of providing parking, we do hope that it has an environment first approach, where it's based on a sustainable approach to providing bioswales and green infrastructure. On the next slide, the current parking lot and the sand dune, and on the next one shows the aspiration of parking being able to still be accommodated within the context of protecting the resources that you have. And then site furnishings, amenities, and play on the next slide, where we heard throughout the process the importance of upgrading some of the play facilities, of introducing color to kind of make the mark throughout the plan. On the next slide, lighting, where we know that lighting is important, that it has to be dark sky compliant, and we've provided some examples of what that might look like. And then on the next slide, park buildings, where we pull together the suggestions that are in the Canatara Park plan, and we pull out the specific locations for each and every one of the components of the new park buildings. And on the next slide, it shows you some examples of the aspiration that we see for some of those facilities, very characterful and rich in architecture. On the next slide, we're well aware of how well used the park is used for special events and celebrations, and we wanted to make sure that they are accommodated for. And on the next slide, we heard about opportunities and a desire to have some kind of food and beverage offered in the park. And so we are showing that location that I introduced earlier on, and then some examples of what that's looking like in other locations. Ask my colleague, John Linton, to walk us really quickly through some of the costing.
Thank you, Donna. And can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, super. Good afternoon, Mayor Bradley and Council. I'm John Linton, a Director of TCI Management Consultants. We often work with the Planning Partnership looking at implementation and financial considerations, and I'll very briefly talk about that now. Next slide, please. So right now, the costs of operating Canatara Park to the city are about $884,000 a year. This comes from city staff. This is about 7% of your overall Parks and Recreation operating budget of $12.4 million. So looking forward ahead, a couple of things to point that these are very high-level order of magnitude estimates. We are looking at a plan that will probably take 10 plus years to implement. It's always a little speculative looking out to the future, but we have got some preliminary estimates of what might be involved. So looking at the next slide, the operating costs break out to additional staffing costs and then direct operating costs. And what we did here was to take each and every one of the 67 initiatives that comprise the overall plan and assess them into 4 categories. One would be on the staffing side, if there are no staffing costs whatsoever, or if there were only minor costs, moderate or major staffing costs. We made some basic ballpark reasonable assumptions as to what those levels of costs might be. And then looking at other direct operating costs for materials, equipment, and so forth, same sort of 4-part categorization scheme. And when you put all of that together, going to the next slide, it gives us some estimate of what the capital costs and the operating costs are going to be. Looking at that little table at the top, you can see that the bottom line total order of magnitude capital costs for implementing the plan over the next 10 plus years would be something like 10.7 to 11.4, say, $1 million. And you can see those costs broken out by each of the 5 event zones or zones that Donna was talking about, as well as some miscellaneous costs. Turning to operating costs, you can see here that we've again broken this down into the staffing implications and all other direct operating costs. The first column there shows the current situation of $884,000, and then the estimate of what the incremental cost would be at the end of your build-out period in today's dollars. So it looks like the additional cost would be something like on the order of a 38% increase in your overall operating costs for the park. That excludes, just incidentally, the Nature Education Center and an expansion of the Children's Animal Farm. So those are the costs. Looking at the revenue side, which is the next slide, currently you're generating a fairly small amount of revenue. It's about 1.2% of your annual operating costs, about just under $11,000 a year. Again, this information comes directly from staff. So limited amount of revenue generated at present. And this leads to a number of suggestions and recommendations about how you might be able to increase that revenue generation component or possibility after implementation of some of the park initiatives, which takes us to the next slide, which presents some of the kind of recommendations. First, we're suggesting that the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding between the city and the Seaway Kiwanis Club, should and could be updated and renewed annually. Secondly, clearly set out the roles and responsibilities of each party. These are a little vague at the moment. We're suggesting that the park should be a separate operating line item in the city budget. That would make your ability to monitor and determine what's going on in the park just that much easier. The Friends group and other stakeholder groups could play a more active role, perhaps in the ongoing operation and management of the park through volunteer activities, and that MOUs similarly to what you have with Kiwanis be developed to work with these various stakeholder groups. And with that, a few words on implementation. I'll turn it back to Donna.
Thanks, John. So just in closing, where the plan, if we go to the next slide, brings together 67 initiatives across the entire park. There's 9 overarching strategies. We are trying to protect the extremely rare ecological systems that you have on this park, obviously protect the integrity of the Blue Flag Beach. Thousands of people shared their thoughts through the process over the past several months. Your web page had 15,000 visits and 9,000 people were reached through Instagram. So I feel that along the way we heard from a lot of people, and we did the job of trying to balance things that some people don't agree with. So with that, I'll close the presentation. We can stop sharing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. A couple of questions to lead off the questions. Why build a new band shell instead of upgrading the present one and making it state of the art?
Sure, that's an option. We heard from many of the stakeholders that were involved in events that it wasn't, that it could be improved. And so our gut was to start from scratch, but absolutely when the city staff get into the details, if it makes more sense to upgrade the existing facility.
Well, second point is it's probably minor in the scheme of things, but even during COVID, we looked at parking fees for people from out of town. It's ungovernable. It would deny people from Point Edward and you name it in Lambton County from attending what is the regional park for the area. So to me, that's just a throwaway. I just don't see that as a viable way to raise revenue. Increased fees, yes, those things can happen, but the parking fee thing, I think, will just be very divisive for the community and for council. That's my comment to you, and I'll ask for any questions from council. Before I go for motion, Councillor Burrell. Councillor Burrell.
Thank you, Your Worship. Couple things with regards to the. I don't know how you would define it. Your pages aren't numbered, but in our it's page 100 of 899, and it's the estimated costs, and obviously the major cost in the based on the order of magnitude kind of thing. The beach zone subtotal is between, well, it's very close to 5 million. So what exactly would be purchased with the 5 million?
Well, the matrix lists all of the component parts of in the report. There's a line item for each one of the lettered items on the master plan. So it ranges from the new lifeguard station, boardwalk, accessible mats to the water's edge, a new playground, a new fitness stations, upgrading the parking lot, et cetera, et cetera. So there's about 12 items that contribute to that cost.
Do you have a page reference or anything?
In my report, it's page 80, but I don't know how your report was distributed, was provided. It's chapter 6.2.
Oh, well, I'll have to pass on that. I don't see how it's referenced. Well, anyway, second question has to do with parking. And I actually had sent this question on ahead through staff. How many parking spots are there currently in the park? And then I also asked how many were 10 years ago. And then thirdly, how many parking spots will there be if this plan is implemented?
I'm not sure through you, Your Worship. I know Stacy. Wherefore did you want to? There you are. There you go, Stacy.
Through Your Worship to members of council, the park overall has just over about 900 parking spaces. It kind of flexes. There's a lot of side areas, like boulevard areas, that sort of serve as pseudo parking spaces. So to be honest with you, there's not like an accurate number that we've been working with. But certainly in and around that 900 mark has sort of been a floating number for a long time within that park. We are unaware of any in the last 10 years sort of new improvements or changes. We've certainly done a number of improvements to the boulevard spaces throughout that park. There's been some great work done by engineering in terms of the road and access and those types of things to help better define where parking can go. But again, it isn't a clear-cut perfect number. There's a lot of options for parking throughout that park space. And the plan itself, as was alluded to earlier, does propose some new entrance parking at the sort of the far end around that Michigan side as well. So it is a bit of an evolving number, to be honest.
So, sorry, from my observation, there was a significant reduction in parking spots. Is that not correct?
You can try and work through a more specific number and certainly return to council. Joanna, offhand, do you have a tiered number in terms of the impact from the dune protection work that's proposed?
We have pulled, we have absolutely pulled the parking out of the most active part of the dune. We heard many stories from staff and people that participated in our sessions that city often has to clear the sand from the parking lot because the parking lot wants to be a dune. So we pulled it back. So we do lose some parking from the beach side lot, but it's still hundreds of parking spaces are provided there. And then as Stacy said, there's still parking all along the Park Drive and at the new locations that we've proposed at the south end. So it is reduced by, I don't even know what the final number, because as Stacy says, it's in a bit of a flux because the parking spaces aren't marked. They aren't painted lines where you can go out and count them all. So it depends on how people park. But there will still be hundreds and hundreds of parking spaces at Canatara.
Well, because it seems to me in the that's one of the questions I asked for the past, is that they put in quite a number of rocks, big rocks, along some of the driveways so people could not park. And that was, to me, was a big takeaway. And then if we're readjusting these dunes, again, but if you haven't numbered them, I guess the question is kind of a waste. All right,
we are parking, just if I could just have a quick follow-up, the plan does show parking pods all along the driveway to organize the parking in a way that doesn't impact, again, the ecological features that are the signature of this park. And so we're trying to organize the parking in locations where it doesn't disrupt some of the forested habitats.
Okay, my next question is this dark sky. I understand what the concept of dark sky is, but I'm not sure if that's what should happen in a municipal park, because there's an awful lot of people like to walk through the park, and I'm wondering if that is a conflict between people wanting to have well-lighted areas so they know they feel safe versus the wanting to keep the dark sky for the environmental impact, I guess, of the light pollution.
Yeah, through you, your worship, the dark sky just means that the light fixture projects the light down so that it does exactly what you're saying, makes the walkways and the areas well lit to people using the park. It doesn't project the light up. And so it's just a specific kind of luminaire light fixture. It doesn't any longer let the light go up. And it's a pretty standard requirement in most municipalities now to have lighting be dark sky compliant.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Dennis, Councillor McRoberts.
Thank you, Mayor Bradley. With respect to some of the walking trails, natural walking trails in Canatara Park, we have some of the most beautiful walking trails you'll ever see around Lake Chippewa. It's so picturesque. We have a lot of photographers that will sit there for hours and take beautiful pictures. That stuff isn't going to be touched, right? We also have a walking area. It's very, very peaceful and tranquil at the corner of Christina and Lake Chippewa Drive. People have different names for it. Some people call it Tarzan Land. Some people have different names for it. But that's a lovely area also. And those areas aren't going to be touched, are they? If you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, could not agree more. And we did, in the document, there is a page on page 65 in the report where we've laid out the walking trails, and we absolutely heard how important the walking and cycling trails are.
Sure.
We continue to show the loops in the document.
Excellent. Thank you.
Councillor McRoberts. Thank you.
Thank you. Overall, I love the whole plan. It's including from children and strollers that can just be, rode around the park to actually being involved in it and looking for the canopies and the walkways and everything. So kudos to you. here are just some of my suggestions. On your first piece, that the beach zone, number B,
Yes.
we have a lot of seniors that, regardless of accessibility or even getting out of their cars, it's enough just to get in their car and drive to the park, and all they want to do is get into the parking lot and look at the water. We're going to set it up so that there's going to be layer after layer blocking the view from the parking lot. Can we not just take a smidge where you've got B4 to B10 going on the far side, the northeast side, and just kind of push back whatever the walkway is for the dunes, lower it down just so anybody in that whatever 10, 12 car section could just have the view. That's number one. Number two, there seems to only be 3 accesses to the beach from our parking lots. And the busiest part, the strip where all the parking lots are, we need to have more access. If we're talking about accessibility, somebody that's got 3 kids or 5 kids and they're carrying one in a car seat, or you're in a wheelchair, just to go another, whatever, 75 meters, that's a lot for somebody. So it can't just have a few more paths for them to get up and get onto the walkway or to go straight down to the beach. That would be one more. And watering stations. So all of the washrooms that are coming in, some of them have fountains on the outside. I'm just checking to see if we're going to have fountains on the newer ones. And if not, do you have a plan to put watering stations? Kind of like a golf course. Every time you get to a certain hole, there's a filled whatever cooler for water so that people can bring their own water jugs and refill them. And we just want to do what we can to make them stay longer in the park and not have to bring as much to the park, so they can enjoy when they're there with the time they have. So otherwise, I love the access for Michigan, because that brings a whole other part to that side of the park that normally people are just cutting through. If they're walking the path, they're not thinking about ever going in. So literally somebody, if there's picnic tables there, could have another family get together, and they don't even need to be near the water, right? They can just, once you walk into the park, all the trees kind of fill you in, and it's just a lovely place to be. But good job on everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McRoberts. Councillor Kilder.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I guess my question or comment, again, it's about that kind of parking area and the accessibility. Just knowing that throughout the summer, just depending on which way the wind is blowing, in most cases, when the wind is blowing from the south, you can go into the lake and it'll be like glass. And if it's going from the north, you can go into the river and it's like glass. There's always a place where you can kind of go in a non-motorized boat, like a kayak or a canoe. But the farther, one of the things I regularly do is kayak with somebody who is a senior who also has some accessibility issues, and I'm the one who has to carry the kayaks for the most part. And the farther away it is from the beach, and yeah, there's carts you can get as well, but there's also difficulty walking across the sand. We currently have some sort of mat system that gets you most of the way down to the beach. So just following up on what Councillor McRoberts has said around access points, because in this city, we are absolutely blessed most of the summer. If the wind's blowing from one direction, you can go into the river. If it's blowing from the other, you can go into the lake and really have a great time on, one of those bodies of water. So accessibility is incredibly important for both for viewing, which we see a lot in Point Edward, people just going into that parking lot under the bridge to view the water, sometimes getting out of their cars, sometimes not, but also we do need also that opportunity to access the lake. So thank you so much.
Councillor Gillis, and then I'm going to move on to the next delegation.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to...
I'm sorry, Councillor Boucher after you. Sorry, Councillor Gillis. Councillor Boucher after you.
That's all right, no problem. I just wanted to thank you for a very comprehensive report. You seem to have grasped and initiated everything that people were the most concerned about. One of the things that I raised when you presented the first time was the fact of that lovely vehicle. People love to drive through the park in their cars. And I see that you maintained that drive, that ability to get all the way around with it, that people are used to doing. I was afraid that that might be lost or reconfigured somewhere else, but I really appreciate the fact that you did that. And the other thing I appreciate is the fact that you included a new boardwalk on Lake Chippewa, which is something that's a new introduction to that area, and it's going to enhance that area so much. I'm very, very pleased with the overall effect. I know it's going to take several years to implement it all, but it's a really, really, in my humble opinion, a very good plan.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Bushi and Councillor Vandenberg.
Your Worship, I just have one question very briefly from the consultant. I know there was a figure of some money mentioned around. Could they tell me exactly how much they received from the city, please?
Sorry, through you.
I believe the councillor's asking how much was your contract. I have it in front of me. It was $88,000. And there are other bids, if that helps. The highest bid that was deemed to be worthy of consideration was over $200,000, if that helps, Councillor Bushi.
So, very briefly, what did the consultant, how much money did they receive from the city up to date?
Councillor Bushi, unless I corrected by the treasurer, I believe it was the $88,000 to execute this particular plan. Okay, I'm not seeing anything further. Oh, sorry, Councillor Vandenberg, please go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to correct the record maybe a little bit. I think that we were all asked by the consultants about our thoughts about the what was in the park. So some of that was obviously reported in this report. But my question is not to Ms. Hine, but to staff or to whatever. An article in the Sarnia Journal last week talked about Sarnia's aging infrastructure and growing list of unfunded projects, including the waterfront master plan, multi-use recreation facility, Norm Perry Park upgrades, millions and millions of dollars. My question is to this, Your Worship, it's a good report and I like what I see, but who's going to pay for this? And where are we going to get this money to implement all this stuff when we're talking millions and millions of dollars in all kinds of things that, according to this article in the newspaper, says we don't have the money. So, and I see in the report implementation, short term, within the next 7 years, medium term, 8 to 20, long term, 20 plus years. Most of us will be long gone by that time. So that's my question to staff.
Through Your Worship, to members of council, this is a master planning exercise that was done to provide a longer term direction for the park. The last one that had been done was decades ago, and over time we have seen some significant pressures on the park from different user groups, different expectations by the community, aging infrastructure. This was a great opportunity to put everybody sort of together and say, look, what is the next iteration of Canatara Park? Council will always remain in the driving seat with these concept plans. We would propose sort of different projects to move ahead as money and time permits. Looking that it would come through regular budgeting process that council would have the opportunity to comment on, approve, defer, recommend, or provide some direct input in terms of priority projects for that park. So that's really that general how these types of projects work. The recommendation, the report you'll see is very generic. This is look, defer it back to staff. We'll come back with a series of projects again as money and opportunity comes available through our larger capital planning process every year.
It will be part of our capital budget process. And a good example is this past year, we spent $1 million on significant improvements into that park with roads and trails and other things. No further questions. I'm going to move on to the last two delegations and we'll deal with this matter in about hopefully very soon, later in the agenda. So thanks to the presenters. We appreciate it. And if I could call upon Andrew to bring on Michelle Rondo, and this is delegations related to large item pickups. I believe you received correspondence on this. And then the last delegation is Barb Millett and Sandra Kennard. So with that, Andrew, if you could bring on Michelle Rondo. Ms. Rondo, if you'd like to go forward, please, and speak to council. We have your budget request or your concern about the large item pickup.
Yes, my screen was just repopulating for some reason. It went awry there. But good afternoon, Mayor Bradley, members of City Council, and others. My name is Michelle Rondo, and I'm making this presentation on behalf of the Board of Directors, Mitton Condominium Corporations number 1 and number 15, and Lionheart Management Company. Here today, large items at curbside for our condominium. Reasons for this request are based on consideration, practicality, and finances. Our complexes are for multi-residential units, and the law differ and mattresses into the green dumpster. To the dumpster. Considering sort of this is physically dangerous and impossible for one person to put a large item in the dumpster. The lids are being any angle, they fall back and can damage the dumpster. 2 people lifting a heavy item into the dumpster, there is a greater probability of injury than for garbage. This is problematic for residents and has caused garbage to be left by the side of the dumpster. This is not only unsightly, but attracts scavengers. There have been several instances where items like mattresses and couches have been placed in the dumpsters by unknown people, owners asking them to remove their items. Can you imagine? It's possible unless someone jumps into the dumpster, and that is an unrealistic and dangerous pursuit.
Yeah, Ms. Rondo, Ms. Rondo, unfortunately, we're having some technical difficulties. You're sort of cutting in and out on us.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know what to do about that.
Well, and I'm sorry, I can't help you on that one.
Yes.
We do have your presentation. I do want to ask the head engineer, what's the best way to proceed with this? A staff report back to us? Can we deal with it today? Mr. Jackson?
Through to Mayor to Council. So if Council would like to explore it, I would recommend the staff report. This is a service level we have not provided before. And if we provide it for this multifamily property, we'd have to provide it for all of them, which would come at a significant cost. So it would be best to outline that in a report to Council.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Ms. Rondo, could you hear that? Are you okay with that?
I could hear that. I was going to deal with that in my presentation.
Well, please continue. It's just you're cutting out a bit when you're speaking.
All right. Placing large items in the dumpster now. Now,
Oh, Ms. Rondo, I'm going to thank you for your presentation. I'm going to recommend to council we refer to staff for a report back. This was a very significant issue years ago with the landlords and the city. It's not the first time this has been raised, so
yes, I talked. It's been years ago that I talked with Brian Prowse and Frank Valet and Andre Moran regarding this issue. And at that time, there was a triangular contract with the city and the condominiums and the Canatara. So, all right. So you want me to follow up with? Oh, no, and at that time, because there was a contract, if we had signed the contract, then we would have been able to get, I was told, probably large item pickup, but now the policies and procedures have changed. So.
Okay, what I suggest is I'm going to recommend to council, I said that they refer this to staff, and you'll be notified so you can come back and speak to it when it comes back to council.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Council, can I get a resolution to do so? Councillor White, Councillor Gillis, all in favor? That's done. Thank you very much, and sorry about that technical thing. Last delegation is Barb Millett and Sandra Kennard speaking to the victims of Chemical Valley Memorial Project.
I don't have Barb Millett or Sandra Kennard in by name. If either of you are in the call, if you could raise your hand using the raise hand icon. I'm not seeing
what I'm
them in
going
the call.
to do, Andrew, you don't have anyone on there right now?
No.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is proceed with the rest of the meeting, and if staff can make contact with the delegation and see if they can come back on. So with that, if we can move into the regular correspondence. So the first item is the Canatara master plan, looking to approve it in principle and then put it into the annual capital planning for the city. Councillor Gillis, you're moving it. Seconder, Councillor McRoberts. A discussion? Not seeing any. I'd like to move forward and call the vote then. And this will just take it to the next stage, and it'll be back to you in its history in the next few years. Well, all those in favor? See, I've got Councillor White, Gillis, Dennis, McRoberts, Kellner, Boucher, and Vandenberg, and myself, and Councillor Burrell. So that's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. If we could move to the next item, which is about development charges, and the province keeps on making changes, and this is reacting to those changes. Looking for a resolution. Councillor White, Councillor Gillis, discussion. Councillor Burrell? Oh, okay. Councillor Vandenberg.
Just a question, Your Worship, through you to staff. Again, I just want to know, how did we settle on $43,000 for a development charge when I'm just looking at some prices in the area and elsewhere, but in Plimpton it's $10,000. Lambton Shores is $7,300 to $12,000. Strathroy is $12,000. St. Clair Township is $9,000, and the city of Cornwall is $2,900 to $7,600. How did we get the $43,000?
Through to Mayor to Council, so that information is in the broader development charge background report. Basically, we look at the costs to develop Area 2, all the infrastructure required, pumping stations, water mains, roads, bridges, all that infrastructure, and then we divide that up by the development. Why we're different, I'd say, than some of our neighboring small municipalities is they would be adding, a few incremental houses onto a subdivision. We're looking at developing a whole entire area, so there's a lot of infrastructure required. So we add those costs up and then divide by the number of properties anticipated to be developed.
Thank you. So my question to Mr. Jackson is then, like Plimpton, Wyoming, Fleming Road, the Arrow Woods, the subdivision, 169 new homes. They had to pay for that. How come their costs are so low compared to ours? Again, these are areas putting in infrastructure and bringing it to these subdivisions that have ultimately the developer is going to develop and pay for, and then the municipality is going to assume it.
Through to Mayor Council, so
get the tax dollars.
Yeah, so there are different ways. So like our normal development charge for other areas is closer to $20,000. And again, it's just because some of that infrastructure is already there. Some municipalities develop differently. So some of our neighbors, they do their stormwater infrastructure through the Drainage Act. And so they are paying some of those costs, but it's shown differently than through development charges. And then part of it is just the density required in Development Area 2 was lower, and there's significant infrastructure that needs to be built to make it be built there. Again, council in the city, we can choose to fund more of that portion from tax dollars if we want, but that means we either have to raise taxes or defer other projects to subsidize that cost.
Councillor Dennis.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Bradley, to Mr. Jackson. I believe year to date we've put out 17 new single-family residential building permits. Where this time last year, where were we at? Do you know?
I do not know the answer to that.
Okay, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think we're down 35 to 40%. St. Clair Township and Plimpton, Wyoming are at the same, if not a little bit higher. The market determines, like, the average price of a brand new home in Sarnia, you can't build anything for under $800,000. So you're looking at probably $900,000, $850,000, $900,000 if you're lucky. So our fees are roughly around 5% of a new home build. Like that is very, very high. Like, you know, if I had a restaurant and I said, well, you know what, in order for me to make a profit and pay all my expenses, I'm going to have to charge $200 for a hamburger. No one would come. No one would, care that I had to justify my prices by doing that. It's simple. It's simple business. The thing is when we build new houses, those people pay taxes forever. We got to think of the big picture here. Like if we're charging through the roof, no one's going to build here. They're going to build elsewhere, and we're not only are we losing out on potential taxes, we're losing out on potential people that will shop at our businesses and so on. It's very, very short-sighted. It really is. And we're not just talking like if we're even a little bit high, that can be justified. We were talking about the Canatara Park study not too long ago. There were many people from Point Edward and from St. Clair County that I recognized at those live sessions that were giving input on what they wanted to see in Canatara Park, even though they're not taxpayers. I thought that was kind of humorous, actually. But anyways, I think we're way out to lunch on those fees. I really do. And we can see it just by the new home construction activity that's occurring in the county. It's as simple as that.
I'm going to call Councillor Kilner, then I'm going to call the question.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just wanted to just indicate that just from the numbers that I see, anybody able to, when the average income after taxes in our area is somewhere around $73,000, I'm not sure of who's able to afford an $800,000 mortgage. And so it is important for us to kind of take into account that there are some nuances. This is why affordable housing, supportive housing is so important. So just thought that's important to note in this conversation.
I will call the question then. All those in favor? Councillor Burrell, Councillor McRoberts, Councillor Gillis, Councillor Boucher, Councillor Kilner, Councillor White. Those opposed? American Dennis, and I vote with the majority, so the question passed. I'm going to turn to the clerk for a second. The next item is related to the memorial. Simply defer it to budget, which is the recommendation anyhow. And if we do hear from the delegation, we will work that out with them. So can I get a motion to refer this to capital budget? Councillor White, Councillor Gillis, all in favor. Next is the Waste Management Master Plan. I thought ironically was half of the agenda when you read the report, trying to decrease waste to the landfills. I'm looking for a motion on this, at least to get it on the floor. Councillor Gillis and Councillor McRoberts. Just a question to staff. I recall years ago, London switched to a different collection system and different dates. and it was a public relations nightmare for the city. Are we ready to handle this and the fact that people are so set and used to what they normally do? Mr. Jackson?
Through the Mayor to Council, that's a fair question. Yes, we are well aware that we will have to have significant communication. So we are planning actually now to even send an individual letter to every home that will let them know specifically what their date is, so they don't even have to go look on the website. We will do radio ads. We will have the website option. We will have the app. We recognize we will need to do significant communication, and we know we'll have to be forgiving on those first couple weeks during the transition. It is much simpler than the schedule that London was looking at doing. But yeah, people's collection dates will change, and so we have a significant campaign planned to educate people on that.
Thank you. Any questions from council on this? Councillor Burrell, Councillor Dennis?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, with regards to the fact that Blue Box is being paid for by others and not us, so in theory, there's some Blue Box savings. So will that Blue Box savings, and I know we've had some for a little while now, will it hopefully offset the green bin costs that are coming down the pipe?
Through the Mayor to Council, so we have already seen those Blue Box savings because we have already transitioned. So we have already utilized those in previous budgets to mitigate increases in previous years. So the original plan was to try to keep those savings for the Green Bin program, but in previous budgets, the decision was made to mitigate the tax increase at the time and utilize those savings. So they are not available now for the Green Bin program.
Councillor Dennis?
Thank you,
go ahead,
Mayor
Councillor
Bradley.
Burrell, go ahead, and then Councillor.
Yeah, sorry, just a follow-up. So what amount, if we compare what we expect to pay with this new green bin versus what we in theory saved from the Blue Box, is there any type of comparison we can do?
Yes, if we're saying now, I just at the ballpark, the recycling may have been in the range of $1 million, but I need to confirm that. The new program is in the range of $2.5 million. You will see we're also looking at exploring other savings. For example, one way to save some cost is if we reduce garbage collection to bi-weekly. So there is some other things that we will present to council in the future for debate and discussion to try to find ways to offset some of those extra costs for the Green Bin program.
And that'll be coming back to us at some point. Okay, Councillor Dennis, Councillor Gillis.
Thank you, Mayor Bradley. Everyone needs to be very clear on the fact that this waste master plan includes two very contentious items based upon the public feedback which I have received. There are two items planned for implementation in 2027. In this plan, from what I've heard, the majority of our citizens do not want. The move to garbage collecting every other week is included for 2027, and there is a very strong opposition from the community about reducing the city's garbage collection in half. In addition, the creation of a green bin program is included for 2027, which is not only very expensive, but has very mixed public reviews. Our own Sarnia survey noted the public feedback was very negative towards reducing garbage collection to every other week. Many citizens also question the expense and the problems associated with a green bin program. As such, anyone on council who votes for this plan as it stands today is approving the move to every other week garbage pickup and a green bin program with no known cost estimate in about 2 years. If this master plan is approved, this approval will then be used as the rope that hangs us in 2027 when the plan says we implemented significantly reduced service levels for garbage pickup and green bins at a likely very large taxpayer cost. To be very clear, every single citizen who has contacted me does not want garbage collection cut in half, to be very clear. And as such, I will be voting against this plan, which recommends 2027 reduced service levels for garbage pickup and an unknown cost for green bins. Thank you.
Mr. Jackson, the green bins is not a local choice. It is a provincial designation.
Council, that is correct. There's a provincial policy statement which mandates municipalities our size to implement a green bin program.
Well, if council has objection to it, they should voice that to the Ford government. I've got Councillor Gillis and Councillor McRoberts.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think I'm not muted. My concerns were similar a bit to Councillor Dennis. However, in a little bit different way. I was concerned that we were going to wait until 2027. That's a long time out. And looking at what Petrolia is doing and initiating so much more quicker than we are, I was just wondering why we are kind of slow at this. On the other hand, when we watch what Petrolia is doing, we can basically get a sense of whether it's successful or not. But just speaking from personal, my own personal experience, just coming back from Calgary, they've had the green bin in for about 10 years now, and it has been a very successful program, and they do have bi-weekly pickup because of the sheer sizes of the bins. So it's certainly, because the green bin itself is going to be eliminating a lot of the manpower involved in it, but also the fact of the size of the bins are quite robust. So there is no odor, there is nothing. I was taking them out with my granddaughter and burying them in, and it was not a problem at all. So just some reassurance for those who are a little concerned about it. But coming back, why are we waiting when Petrolia is moving ahead so quickly? Is it just economies of scale?
Through the Mayor to Council. So my understanding is they have been planning it, for a bit of time now. Also, it is possibly the scale of their operation that can quickly implement it. In our case, we need a contractor who has garbage trucks that have the automated arm. Right. And that's the longest piece. So generally, we have to put a tender out, find a contractor. They have to order those trucks, wait for those to be manufactured. That's the largest impact. If it can be done quicker, we'd look at that. Partly it's timing. We don't want to implement during winter just because of complications with that. If we can do it quicker, we will. But generally, that's in the industry now. It takes that long to order trucks, order bins, and those kinds of things.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McRoberts.
My only question would be, if we do go to the every other week, citizens can still take whatever bags of garbage they may have and drop it at one of the sites for free, correct?
Yes, through the Mayor Council, there would be options for drop off. And again, the every other bin, that is the kind of recommended path. Again, when we come back to council for decisions on those contract awards, we can review the cost comparison. We can maintain weekly service if we want, but it comes at a significant cost. And again, from best practice in other communities, once the green bin's in place, people realize that they don't need that level of garbage service collection, but there would be alternative options for drop off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me call the question. All those in favor of this motion? Councillor Bushi, Burrell, Gillis, Roberts, Kilner, White, and Vandenberg, and myself. Those opposed? Councillor Dennis. Moving on. Next is the operations plan for salt management and winter operations coming up. Looking for a motion on this. Councillor Burrell and Councillor Kilner. Not seeing any discussion. All in favor? That is done. And then moving to the next one is the Police Services Board is looking for more compensation for their duties. Councillor Burrell. Seconding it, Councillor Gillis. Any discussion?
I'm sorry, Mayor Bradley, I didn't hear that.
I said, is there any discussion on the motion's been moved and seconded to increase the remuneration for the police board?
Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
I just want to make a note, I'll be voting against it. Myself and many others served for years at a nominal honorarium, $1,200 a year. And that was because it was an honor to serve on the board. With that, I will call the question. Those in favor? Mr. Vandenberg, White, Gillis, Kilner, McRoberts, Burrell, and that's it. Those opposed, Councillor Dennis, Bushi, and myself. So the question passes. Moving on. Celebration of Lights is looking for, it's very timely, they're looking to make some money off the posts they have down in the park. Councillor Burrell, Councillor Gillis, any discussion? See none, all in favor. That is done. Now, police board appointments. There are two appointments. One is a council appointment, and the second one is the mayor's position. And I stepped down after serving 34 years on that board, so we're looking for two different appointments. Councillor Burrell.
I'll move Anne Marie Gillis for the first position.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Vandenberg. Any discussion? All in favor? Those opposed? That passed. Need one more motion.
Thank you.
Councillor Burrell?
I'll move Chrissy McRoberts, Councillor McRoberts for second appointment.
For seconder?
Oh, I can't.
Councillor Kilner has seconded. All those in favor? One, Councillor Gillis, Vandenberg, White, myself, Kilner, McRoberts, Burrell, and Bushy. So that passes. So thank you, everyone. Moving on now. Next is insurance. Very hefty price tag for us every year.
Yeah.
Looking for a motion. Councillor Burrell? You're moving it. Seconder? For discussion, Councillor McRoberts. Any comments? Councillor Dennis?
I have the floor?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I have made my views known on putting our insurance program out to tender several times in the past. I note that my motion on tendering our insurance saved us over $300,000 from simply renewing with the current provider the last time I requested this. In addition, as I recall, the time before we had requested insurance to go to tender, we saved about $1 million from where we had expected to be. I also argued at this time last year against any automatic renewals. I'm also opposed to simply renewing our insurance at a 5% price hike, simply because we don't want to be viewed as a shopper, as staff have said in the report. I think the city needs to be viewed as a shopper, a really smart shopper who gets the best value for our citizens. Of course, asking for a quote is onerous. It can also save the taxpayers money, as we have proven on the last two occasions. As such, I will be voting against this renewal at an almost 5% increase, and instead requesting a tender if this recommendation fails. This is a very big item for our budget, and our taxpayers deserve the extra effort. We have proven on the last two occasions that my suggested approach saves significant money for our taxpayers. Thank you.
If the motion fails, I'll come back to you. Let me call the question then. Those in favor? In favor, Councillor Bushy, Councillor Burrell, Councillor White. Those opposed? Councillor Gillis, Dennis, Roberts, and Kilner, and Vandenberg. And I see no harm, and I'll vote with those opposed. I see no harm in going out to the marketplace again. Yes, it's costly, but on the other hand, every time we've done this for decades, we usually end up in a better place. I'm sorry, Ms. Claro.
Through the mayor to council, I just wanted to comment on the ability to go to tender. So we just received this insurance premium renewal proposal. Last time we went to tender, we were required to go to tender for 8 weeks in order to facilitate submissions from the 4 providers of municipal insurance programs, only 2 of which responded, which at the time was our incumbent and our current provider, Aon. We have received feedback from another municipal insurance provider that they will not submit proposals to Sarnia because we have gone to tender so many times, but that's beside the point. If we were to put together a tender at this point, even if it were up for 6 weeks, it is very, very possible we will not have insurance in place for January 1st, given the time it takes to put that tender together and the time it takes to review the proposals from various proponents. We could certainly go to tender, the summer of 2025 for implementation in 2026. We could definitely put that together. However, last year when we put this report together, it is very possible that we are down to 1 proponent, as 2 others haven't bid on our opportunities in the last few years.
Unfortunately, you jumped in and we're already in the middle of a vote. So I'm going to turn to the clerk. I had put the question forward. There had been a vote taken.
If I could seek some clarification from the city solicitor, what I understood council just voted on was a 4-year term. Is that a correct understanding? Because council, in my opinion, at this point, could vote on a single-year term. Is that accurate? This is a single-year term. This is a single-year term. Okay. Yeah. The vote has been called and was defeated, so council could reconsider its decision and revisit that question.
Okay, I'm looking for direction. Councillor Kilner.
just kind of following Councillor Dennis's comments, I wonder if, for the time being, we might actually reconsider, but we would also, I think council needs to receive this information earlier so that we can consider how we move forward at the end of a term with more than a month or two notice. So I hope that makes sense. You know, I'm suggesting that we reconsider for this year, just so we have insurance for January, but also that we direct staff to engage these conversations, you know, at least 4 months prior. That would be my suggestion.
That's a good suggestion. Okay, I'm going to the clerk. Where are we at right now?
So the question has been called. The motion, which was a recommendation by staff, was defeated. So at this point, council could reconsider 2/3 vote today, and you can look for a mover and seconder to introduce the recommendation once again.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to look for a motion of reconsideration, moved and seconded. I believe Councillor Kilner, you were suggesting that. Seconder? Councillor Dennis? And I will need 2/3 to deal with it today. If not, we could always put it in front of the budget meeting. All those in favor? And those opposed? So that is reconsidered. And so I would take from you, Councillor Kilner, a motion then.
Yeah, simply the same, the same one, Your Worship, to accept this recommendation for a 1-year term, and you know, to know by, I don't know if the end of August or early, like our September meeting, whatever gives us the most you know, appropriate time to reconsider. So I would probably suggest August, by our August meeting.
It's any consolation, this has happened many times. I think I almost called a meeting on Christmas Day because 20 years ago because of issues with the insurance, the lack of competition. So this is a good direction forward. All those in favor?
Sorry, Your Worship, our city solicitor has a question.
Through the mayor to council, this is more of a statement rather than a question. So with our insurance package, it is a yearly renewal. So this will be brought to council every fall. Typically in August, our provider is able to ballpark what a potential increase to the premium may be for January 1 of the following year. However, it's early August, early September that they commence with the renewal applications, at which point the city submits various documentation in order for the insurance companies to provide us with a premium quote, and the premium quote is received typically in October. I will absolutely ask that our insurance company make every effort to provide all of this information earlier next year, though, to give council an ample opportunity to direct staff to move this to tender.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly, you moved that, but I didn't get a seconder. I just want to make sure who the official seconder is. Councillor Dennis, okay.
I also have a question, sir.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Like I said before, in the staff report, it increases by 5%. What exactly is 5% in dollars?
It is approximately $89,000.
$89,000, the price of a luxury car. So you know what? I've ever since I've been on council, I've made a motion or to get a quote, and I'm sure every one of us on this call would when our car insurance or our house insurance is up, we would put out for tender. And I couldn't care less if someone called me a shopper. You know, we have to do better with people's tax dollars, and this is just sloppy. This is just sloppy work, and this happened 2 years ago too as well. And apparently we missed the deadline. It had to do more with someone changing jobs actually and such. This is an epic fail as far as I'm concerned. Seems like people don't care about taxpayers' dollars, but they would certainly care about their own dollars. This doesn't wash with me. And Councillor Kilner is dead on. He's dead right. This should have been made aware to us much longer ago. not on the final moment like today.
Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Taking that as a unanimous vote. Thank you. Moving on, procurement policy and protocols. This has been in front of you a few times. This is back to you. Councillor Burrell, you're moving it? No? Is there a Councillor Gillis, you're moving it? Seconder? A seconder on this? Calling once, calling twice, calling third time. Councillor White has seconded it. Discussion. Councillor Dennis.
Thank you. Council is now being asked by staff to approve this almost 200-page procurement policy created by an out-of-town consultant at the cost of close to $60,000. I continue to have many concerns about this, and so should every local business owner out there who wants to do business with the city. The bottom line is that you basically need a legal department to read the document. This policy was supposed to reduce red tape. As I said before, nothing screams red tape like a 200-page bureaucratic legalese manual. This over-the-top document will make it very difficult for small businesses, local mom and pop shops to even put in a proposal for work. This document favors large entities and, in my opinion, creates huge additional burdens for local companies. In addition, this plan does not provide the transparency we need. Remember Councillor Burrell being refused answers? Well, with this new manual, our black box of purchasing will get even deeper and darker. I'll be saying a big no to this approval of this manual. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other speakers. I'm going to call the question. Those in Councillor Burrell.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I had encouraged council to send this back, and they really just gave us the same thing again, really. You know, but we get no information in terms of how is, you know, the observation for me, and I think others, is that it's almost impossible to use a document like this if you're a small local business. And we're a city of 75,000 people with lots of small businesses. So the difficulty for them to participate in the city tax dollars, other than construction companies, I would suggest we have very few people have the ability to participate in any city contracts. Now, I could be wrong, but that's what I kind of hope the city staff would come back with. Give us some kind of an outline of how this functions. But no, they just come back and said, look, guys, you should have passed this last time. So, you know, I am not going to support this. I think we need somehow to stand up for our small businesses, because this is an onerous document to have for our ordinary mom and pop shops, local shops, trying to deal with this. If you can afford to have an investment department or whatever, fine, or a purchasing department, and then maybe you have enough people who can solve a document like that. But I don't know how any local businesses, other than construction, because they're normally bidding on very large contracts, but I don't see many locals come through. I could be mistaken, but nobody's given me any proof, so I will not be supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor McRoberts. Councillor Kilner.
Thank you, through the chair. Did something happen in the past that we've had someone that we gave up to and there were legalities that cost us money? If I had to apply, if I wanted to, for my business to apply for one of these, I would just back away from it. It just would be too much work to even understand, let alone get through it, and then to get what contract. I guess that would be number one. And what do other cities have? Like, what are the closest ones to us? What does Chatham have as far as theirs? Like, is it only 100 pages, or have they just made it up themselves and it's been the same one for 60 years? I don't know. I get we have to protect ourselves. So in case there's theft or anything like that, or someone didn't have the proper safety protocol and hurt themselves, that we would be somehow liable. I get that, but it is a brutal contract to try and apply for. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kellner, and then I'll go to staff for a response.
Thanks through the chair. One of the things I did wonder about, and I think it's important to wonder about in the midst of this is just wondering if we should have a specific procurement policy for small business that is short and kind of straight to Councillor Dennis's point. I imagine that might further complicate things, but I'm in general that in support of this notion that this needs to be simplified. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to go to staff to respond. I mean, how many contracts do we let a year? Maybe you don't have the answers right now. And how many are judge local Sarnia Lambton? Do we have that information?
Through the mayor to council, offhand, I don't have that in front of me. I can certainly get that to you as quickly as possible. I did want to note we have our procurement supervisor on the line, Jessica Sherman, that can speak to the complexity of this policies and protocols manual as well as government procurement in general. So I will turn it over to Ms. Sherman.
My apologies for the delay. Through the mayor to council, public procurement is in itself very complex. There are several layers of legal, regulatory, financial, and operational considerations that need to be considered when we are doing what we do. This is a very hefty document. Councillor McRoberts, you asked what Chatham does. Chatham does have a 41-page manual. Theirs is very generic. It's prescriptive in regards to authority levels and is similar to the current policy we are operating under today, which was implemented in 2020. This new document is much more descriptive of our processes. It outlines what we do step by step, not only what we do as procurement, but also our other stakeholders. As was mentioned in our report, the first several pages, the first part of this new policy, pages 5 to 28, is our general policy overview, similar to what we have today. Pages 29 to 164 are very much detailed documentation as to the steps that each stakeholder needs to take. Included in this package is also documentation that we would be required to have on hand. Documentation that would need to be filled out by our internal stakeholders every time they ask for a procurement. These are the defensible documents that we are missing today, that Mrs. Kollar has spoken about in the past, being able to ensure that we have documentation on hand for a defensible case if there are any litigation issues that come up.
Okay, well, let's start this. Can you address the question of could there be a small business provision in there to ensure that small businesses have a fair and equitable shot at some contracts?
Absolutely, through the mayor to council. There is also, I do want to make sure that there is clarity that this document is not what our businesses would see when they are bidding on tenders through our bids and tenders platform, anything that is a formal process. That is a specific tender document that goes out to the businesses when they are bidding on it. It is very much streamlined, and it has specific terms of reference and scope within that document itself that guides them towards what they need to be submitting. There is an opportunity that we can simplify and provide a summary document on our website. If that is something that is a takeaway, that we could just provide an overview. We have had some conversations internally that we may look to do something like the City of Brampton does, where they actually do vendor training sessions, that vendors can come in and ask questions about our procurement policy. Resources may be an issue, but that is something we could potentially look at.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Carter, I presume you'll follow up on that. Where are we at, Madam Clerk? We've got a motion moved and seconded. Yeah, I've got Councillor Burrell. I got you. I just want to make sure you got both the mover and seconder at the clerk.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Councillor Burrell.
Yes, since we had the procurement people here, what level of participation do we have by local, other than, I know construction does a lot, but other than construction, what is the participation in city procurement from locals?
Yeah, through the mayor to council. Right now, our invitational threshold is anywhere up to $50,000. So that essentially allows us to go out and get quotes from whomever we determine, including local vendors. With this new procurement policy, we are actually looking to increase that threshold so that we can engage further with local vendors, allowing more of an affordable option for us to use a local pool.
Thank you.
It may actually remove some of that red tape for participation for them.
You know, I would like do you have like a number, like how much is actually happens, like as a
through the mayor and council? Unfortunately, I don't have that offhand, but that is something we could report back on.
If you would do that, that would be appreciated. Councillor Gillis, then I'm going to call the question. Mr. Gillis, you're muted.
We're getting to the end of the meeting. One of the reasons that I put this forward was I did have the chance to read this twice. And particularly coming back to Jessica's, Miss Sherman, and it's page 100 of the document. And it talks about, it's annex number 5, talks about open competition protocol. And it does pick up what we have been saying, how we would like to simplify certain things for certain people. But coming back to that, if we amend this particular motion as it is written and put in all the suggestions that we've heard, particularly as it relates to small business, recognizing that the way that procurement has happened, it's evolved over the years, certainly since the last time I was on council and well back into the 2000s. But there's always been some difficulty amongst municipalities in getting it right. So I appreciate the fact that all of this work and energy and time has gone into this. Also, one of the things that we did ask for was that this go back to the public domain, which it did and was documented, and no one responded at all. And we've seen people responding quite vociferously if they're upset about something, and there's been nothing. So recognizing that it is a very large document, but recognizing as well that it's more than what it seems, and the actual procurement policy of it, that as it pertains to the vendors themselves, is not as large as one would think. So having said that, and being the mover of this, I was wondering if I could make an amendment to this at this time, Your Worship, or if someone else would amend this document to incorporate what everyone has said with regard to simplifying the process for those coming forward under 50,000, I think was the number that you said. Ms. Schumerman, was that correct?
Yes, so the open competition would be for 134,000.
At this point in time?
At this point in time, it is 50,000.
Okay. Can I make a suggestion to council, and an amendment really is in order, is that to pass this, if you wish, and then have that report back that we were told about, and then we can amend it once we get that in front of us and what the impacts are. Because what I don't like is making a decision today and then we find out, as we just found out earlier, we didn't get information, and then we have to reverse ourselves. So I would suggest, if you want, pass this today, get another report on the impacts of how we can make this more small business friendly for Sarnia Lambton, and have that come to the next meeting. If that makes sense.
So you're suggesting we approve it in principle?
I would say you go and approve it and just ask for the suggestions from councillors to come to the next meeting with some background, and we can see what the impacts are. Okay. Just a suggestion. I don't want us to come back and have to redo something we just did.
No, okay. It makes sense to me.
So we'll take that as notice then. So I'm going to call the question. Those in favor of the motion? Councillor Bouchy, Burrell, Vanderberg, Kellner, myself, McRoberts, Gillis, White, and those opposed. Councillor Dennis. Okay, thank you. Moving on, we're near the end here of the regular agenda. Naming rights. This is a good suggestion to find out exactly what the marketplace will do. That did not happen last time.
Yes.
Moved by Councillor Gillis, seconded by Councillor Kilner. Any questions? Councillor Burrell, Councillor Vandenberg, Councillor White, Councillor Dennis.
Well, I'm starting to sound like a negative Nelly, but this here, again, we going to spend $30-some thousand for another search for a contract we already have in existence. As when this was on the agenda by one of our friendly neighborhood citizens, they sent me a document that lists out all of the arenas in the OHL and which ones have naming rights, how much they get, the whole package. And we in Sarnia, we get, if this person's information is correct, we get $44,000 a year, and I understand this contract is going to be about $34,000. Now, you know, even though I would assume the contract will be for a number of years, like, I don't think we need to do that. Surely we've got somebody in town who can take our somebody in the city that can take the existing contract. There's only going to be a handful of companies, I'm assuming, that will be interested in bidding and work out something within our own people without having to spend $35,000 for another consultant to give us something we've already got. And it's our building. I don't know. I just find this too much. I'm not going to support going to do something to a consultant we should be able to do in-house.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Vandenberg, Councillor White, and Councillor Dennis that will deal with the question.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. So I think I might have the same document that Councillor Burrell has, but it points us that the top of the heap is London at over $6 million over 10 years, and at the bottom of the heap is us. And so deals ranging anywhere from $640,000 a year to just under $44,000 a year for Sarnia. So I know that we have people out there that would love to take ownership of that sign out front of that arena, but again, I'm opposed to spending another $35,000 on going out to find somebody to do an appraisal. One of the things that I do recall from some time ago is that didn't we not get somebody out there to look at our assets and tell us what was marketable out there? I thought we had something like $2 million worth of marketable advertising on different assets that we own. Whatever happens to that document, so I'm just wondering about that.
Yeah. Does someone on staff want to comment on that?
Through the mayor to council, we do have a report. It is a few years dated that looked at the advertising opportunities in the city as a whole and came back with every potential avenue the city could take to generate some revenue. Now, this contract is very specific as to which items Progressive is currently allowed to advertise on. It's down to what they can put on each sign, what is attributable to the Sarnia Sting, what else can be sold to outside advertising opportunities. However, the contract stipulates in section 17 that Progressive is able to extend the term of this contract, provided we negotiate at the current fair market value of their specific naming rights at this arena. So we would need to determine what the current fair market value of their naming rights specifically are at this arena, which we can't use other arenas to compare to given our market size, the age of the arena, the size of the arena, and the various opportunities that are available.
Yeah, I've got Councillor White, Councillor Dennis, and then Councillor McRoberts.
Thank you. I think my comments would be relatively redundant at this point. Pretty much heard everything I was going to say. It just seems, especially in terms of extending a contract, I mean, unless it's you know, a legal requirement that we go out and determine what fair market value is. Could we not just apply inflationary adjustments to this? I could see if we were going out fully for bidding rights, but in terms of extending an existing contract, it would just seem, again, maybe I don't know, but to spend almost a year's worth of revenue on extending a contract for 5 years it just seems silly to me.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Dennis, Councillor McRoberts, and I'll call the question.
There's nothing for me to say. The three gentlemen said it all. Thank you.
Councillor McRoberts.
Our legal already answered my. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will call the question. Those in favor of the question, which is to move forward on this? Those opposed?
Sorry, can we have the motion read back? Is this what's here?
Yeah, it's what directing staff to proceed with engaging a specialized appraisal company to provide a fair market appraisal with sponsorship naming rights to the progressive auto sales arena. That's the motion. So let's deal with that. It's been moved and seconded. Those in favor? Seeing any action here? Those opposed? That is defeated. I voted with those defeating it. So that says to me that staff's going to have to work on this and come back with some other options to us. Moving forward, business park, we're almost at the end here of the regular agenda. The business park, a reference plan on engineering. Looking for a motion, Councillor Gillis. Seconder. Councillor Kellner, any discussion? Councillor Burrell? Oh, you're just voting. Okay, all in favor of the vote. Okay. Councillor Vandenberg, you're now not voting. You're
No, I want to ask a question, Your Worship.
Sure, go ahead.
So you might recognize the guy on this front cover of this magazine from 2004. But anyway, it talks about the Sarnia 402 business park that we're talking about. 95 acres, no land development charges, fast track approval process, reasonable taxation rates, competitive operating costs. If we go forward with this thing, is that going to be the same thing that's going to be offered to people in that area? That there's not going to be any development charges, and we're going to be competitive like they are along 2nd Street in Strathroy and other places?
Ms. Provo? Sorry, Ms. Provo, we can't. Okay, go ahead. We can't hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that. Through your worship, so this project in particular is looking at providing that revisioning of this area of how the lot creation plan will work, as well as where the servicing needs to go to service the leads that we're seeing today. So that development charge component is dealt with separately through the development charges bylaw, but we have brought forward to council an opportunity to look at bringing that exemption for the business parks on development charges out of the bylaw and facilitate that through a community improvement plan. And again, council has approved that through the 2024 budget process to advance, but we're waiting on the completion of the ECDEV master plan to facilitate that process to help inform it. But that being said, Councillor, yes, the intention is to keep the development charge exemption in that area to try to facilitate the growth and development in both of the business parks.
Yeah.
Let me call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's unanimous, including myself. Okay, moving on. We got 3 notices of motion. If we could move through them and then move forward. Councillor Dennis, you've got 2 in a row, and I'll ask you to just move the first one, and then we'll move to the second one.
Thank you very much, Mayor Bradley. My first motion is that the City of Sarnia hereby directs staff to include community, neighborhood, and business consultation in planning matters impacting where people live and work. If I have a seconder, I'd like to offer some additional comments.
Seconder. Councillor Gillis, go ahead, please. Councillor Dennis.
Thank you very much. On October 27th, our local Chamber of Commerce sent council a letter to express their concern over the complete lack of consultation by city staff regarding the downtown proposal pertaining to Victoria Street parking lot. The Chamber statement is, and I quote, "We have significant concerns over the absence of any form of consultation with the businesses downtown. Even more concerning is that the Chamber then met with our senior staff, who said that staff have no obligation to consult with the community on anything planning-wise. I find it troubling that staff would try to justify their lack of public consultation by saying basically that staff do not have to. It is only common sense that council believes benefits from the input of the public. We represent the public, and as such, we need to demand public consultations. The Chamber noted they deserve a voice, and I agree. As such, I urge Council to advise our senior staff that we want to foster a culture of community consultation always. This should include mandatory consultation with local businesses, neighborhoods, and community groups for any planning recommendation that would affect where they live or carry on their business. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other comments? Councillor McRoberts?
Thank you through the chair. This is to the staff. Has this always been the status quo, just to mail out to the owners of buildings around certain areas where development or change is going to happen? Or has it been different? There was always consultation and then we just dropped it off. I'm just looking at the wording of the motion stating, given the absolute lack of business or public consultation. I'm just wondering, has it always been this way? Or, I mean, I believe in changing it. We should be asking the community what they think. They're not making the decision, but they will help inform us. But has it always been a standard just to send the letters, or has someone dropped the ball? Thank you.
Who can speak to that?
Planning.
We are governed by the Planning Act, which mandates what we must do, and that goes to every Ontario municipality. I would think you want to get a little bit more detail on this, because there's lots of things that are very minor that go through planning. And I'll give you an example. A number of years ago, when we had that issue with Procore, I brought a motion to council that we said around residential, we would go beyond the Planning Act if there was something of an industrial expansion in that region. So it can be done, but you need to really shape on how big is the application versus responding to everything. Not getting anyone from staff on here. Or Ms. Forfar, are you going to speak to it? Or?
Through your worship, to members of council, not much more to say other than your comments. The Planning Act does require, it's depending on the application types, it's 60 meters for community investment applications and 120 meters for OP and rezoning applications. That's stock and standard requirements under the Planning Act for public notice, as well as signage and those types of things. But in terms of making changes, we would just ask that there be a consistent change across the board. Otherwise, it just gets a little bit confusing for staff at a front line to be putting out notices. And again, the longer the notice period, the greater requirements. You do extend that timeline. And I know council is well aware that the provincial government has really tried to crack down on timelines and keeping things efficient to keep things moving and keep applications coming forward to council and coming forward to those decision makers in a timely manner. The more notice timelines that we add extends those timelines to get in front of council.
Councillor McRoberts, Councillor Gillis.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to know, where do we draw the line as significant? What projects are significant? We've got to kind of come up with something on that. And perhaps because we do share information for smaller projects, do we just say, you can give your opinion on the Sarnia Speaks, and if we only get 5 or 10% of the people, then we don't move on to the next level other than what is required. But if we get a significant response, then maybe that's where we get our town halls or something else to come up. But we, the council, have to decide where's that line drawn, because staff could be literally buried in trying to make the most of every single project that comes along.
Thank you.
Through your worship, to provide some opportunity just for council to consider, there's nothing ever preventing council from hosting a second public meeting. Again, it's a nice prescriptive way. If we do get a significant response to an application at a singular point in time, which every once in a while we do, there's nothing that you can't say, listen, you know what, there's been a lot of feedback. We want to sort of pause and think on this one and come back next month and reissue notice and host another public meeting for feedback. That is a really clean and prescriptive way to do that, and keeps that control and care in front of council to respond when they feel it's appropriate.
Councillor Gillis?
Yes, I'm really.
Right. I'll come back to you, Councillor McRoberts, if something further.
Actually, I don't have any problem if you have follow-up, Councillor McRoberts.
Councillor McRoberts.
Thank you. Could we then direct staff, included in this, if the Councillor Dennis is open with that in the seconder, to say if we get even 35% of the people speaking to something, that they would alert us so that council can make that decision to hold a public meeting?
Through your worship, the public meetings are mandated. So we are required to put that on the agenda and bring that forward. We may or may not receive correspondence ahead of time. That's why the chair does that call to the public gallery to say, are there folks here that are looking to speak? We're not always provided a heads up as to anybody's interest level. Sometimes people do attend, they may choose not to speak. They may just choose to monitor a process. Again, it becomes very wildly subjective. But again, it does not preclude council if they would like to pause, if they would like to come back. We just saw that with council a couple meetings ago with the Far High development over on Exmouth Street, that there was a decision made to, not necessarily host a second public meeting, but to defer that, push some information back and have us come back in a timely manner. Those sorts of decisions are really best, I would suggest, made one-off in front of council based on the response that we receive. If we do receive a significant response, all of that is included in that report. All that public support correspondence is included, and there can certainly be some support in terms of that level of consultation that we experience as part of that initial public meeting that is mandated before council.
Councillor Gillis.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And I want to come back to Councillor Dennis's motion specifically as it relates to the Fari incident, because of the fact that we as a council no longer have any input on the site plan agreement, which we always had before that new legislation came in. There is no stopgap other than us asking for the developers to hold off so we can get more input from people who have obviously been missed. I'd rather do that in the beginning rather than have to string it out for developers. And I think that's the intention that Councillor Dennis is looking for. So if I could get that clarification from him, I do understand where he's coming from, and I think it's a better way than what we've already experienced.
Go ahead, Councillor Dennis.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gillis. She raises an excellent point with the Ferrari project. That's a perfect example. There's many neighbors that weren't aware of the scope of the project. Some claim that they weren't, or the applicant at the time claimed that they had went around to the various businesses, and the various businesses claimed that they never received any notice or they weren't informed properly, and then as a result, we had to kind of hold things up a little bit. And it was good, obviously, that we were able to reasonable people on both sides came together and we were able to work things out. But like Councillor Gillis said, it'd be nice to nail that before. That's a perfect example of that right there, because we've had lots of people in lots of cases where people say, well, we were never made aware of it, and such. So. I think that's good, but she brings up an excellent point.
I would think you'd want to have something back in front of you to make a final decision. The issue you talk about with Northgate, it's been the same issue with downtown and other areas. Notice is given, and it's given to the property owner.
Oh, it's true.
And at Northgate, if my understanding is correct, in some cases, the property owner, and that happened quite a bit with downtown issues in the past, they didn't pass it on to the tenant.
That's right.
And that's where there's issues. Sorry, there's been a motion moved and seconded. Any further? Councillor McRoberts, and then I'll call the question.
Are we able to decide today, or do I have to give a notice of motion that we add the tenants themselves on top of the landlord being notified?
That's a good idea.
Several times so we follow it through.
It's a good idea, and I would suggest, though, you want to maybe table the whole thing, bring it back so you know exactly what you're approving, because every day, and you see a lot of the stuff that comes in, we have the province saying, don't delay, no more red tape, get your issues dealt with quickly. So let's make sure we know exactly what we're passing and how deep you want to go on notifications and on what issues. Not just planning, but on other issues. What do you want to do? And I think you need to know that. So that's my suggestion, is table it to the next meeting and have something in front of us from staff that would show us exactly what we're doing and who we're going to notify. And then you can amend it if you don't like the meat of that recommendation. Councillor Dennis.
Yeah, and once again, I'd like to compliment Councillor McRoberts, because she make like if the landlord gets the notice but doesn't inform the tenants are the ones that are most affected. So that's a fantastic suggestion on her part. That's excellent.
Okay, so now do you want to call the question today, or do you want to just table it and
whatever you think is best?
I think it's better if staff come back with some general guidelines about this might work. That's functional. You do not want to be putting things out to the expense is huge on issues that aren't at, at the range you want them to be. So I think you need to determine that, and that's up to council to do that. Okay. So, Councillor White?
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to acknowledge Ms. Forfar, who's hoping to speak.
For your worship, I just wanted to provide, we would really appreciate the opportunity to bring back a report for council's consideration. We pull from the tax rolls, which is how we ensure that we meet the Planning Act requirement. The tax rolls are all tied to property owner information. We do not always have access to tenant information at all. That literally would require us doing a street visit and looking at different unit numbers. It is I would suggest to a very onerous exercise. I am unaware of any other municipality that has gone down that path for just that reason. It opens the door up to significant misses in that process, which then, quite frankly, creates a significant amount of controversy. That's why there's signage that goes up on that site as well, specifically so that anybody in the affected area knows right away, that 20 days ahead of time, that, hey, there's something going on that site. Take a moment. All of our information is posted on our city website, which has become a very, very common form of regular communication for folks to access. Again, I just want to be really clear about the logistics of requiring staff to look at tenant opportunities. It's why we encourage our applicants to do a door-to-door, to go and do that groundwork. It is their proposal that staff are reviewing objectively and then bringing to council. The notification requirements under the Planning Act are for property owners. And there are some great landlords who do provide that information, and there are others that simply don't, or they just don't feel it of value. But I do want to stress there are some significant logistics, and the opportunity to bring back a report to clarify some of those pieces would be very helpful from a staff perspective.
I'm looking for a motion to table to bring back some information to Councillor Gillis, Councillor Dennis. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Now, next one is related to encampments, Councillor Dennis, and then I've got one further one after that.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Bradley. My motion is as follows: that the City of Sarnia, to follow the lead of the recent coalition of big city mayors and immediately issue a letter to the Premier to urge the province of Ontario to empower municipalities to take stronger action against homelessness, including the use of the notwithstanding clause in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. This will allow municipalities to remove encampments with no potential legal ramifications, which have been used as an excuse for municipal inaction. If I have a seconder, I'd like to offer some additional comments.
Councillor Vandenberg is seconding.
Thank you. Recently, 12 mayors told the province that they want Ontario to enact stronger laws to help them deal with encampments, homelessness, and addictions. These mayors have asked the province to use the notwithstanding clause to ensure efforts to deal with these encampments cannot be overturned by the courts. We need to save our city and the Rainbow Park neighbors and in the downtown community from the pure chaos in which they currently live. I've been saying this consistently for over a year now, and now we have yet another option to save our city. We need to remember that the Rainbow Park is not full of true homeless people. These people are drug addicts, and some of them are criminals. I have said before, the people in Rainbow Park sadly give the true homeless people a bad name. True homeless people true homeless people are not involved with drugs and crime, and they want help. They want shelters. To the question, where do the Rainbow people Park go? I say they go back to where they came from. They go back to their hometowns. They go back to a shelter and agree to obey the rules. They go to rehab. They go to a facility for help. They go to a non-residential business or in residential area. These campers will maybe even go to a different city and leave our citizens and neighborhoods safe. I also think instead of worrying where these people go, we should focus on where the Rainbow Park and Laurel Lee and other terrorized neighbors could go. Sadly, the answer for the neighbors is they can't go anywhere. They can't sell their houses and as they've lost too much value. They can't go outside for fear of crime. They can't walk on the sidewalks for fear of used needles, and they can't go to the park because there's human excrement everywhere. And they surely can't go outside after dark for their own personal safety. Safety needs to become our first priority. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else before I call it? Councillor McRoberts.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Dennis, for everything you just said. I would also like to point out a few months ago that I asked for additional protocols to be in the park, Rainbow Park. What we had at one point was close to 68 people that we could count, has now, because of the fencing and once they've left not being allowed to return, has dropped to 39. Now, the same that's going to happen if we even got approved for the notwithstanding clause. These folks would just be cleared out and would sprawl throughout the city, which is happening, but they're tending to stay in smaller groups. And we're achieving that with the fence, and hopefully with the cold weather, they're going to seek out to go to the shelters and be somewhere else. But we are almost halfway of clearing out what has happened so that these folks that are neighbors of Rainbow Park get some relief out of that. And hopefully the Ontario government steps up to have, you know, more jails put in place and more mental health clinics so that the people that need help can get it. And then we can deal with the rest of them that need to be prosecuted. Thank you.
Councillor Gillis, Councillor Dennis, Councillor Burrell.
Thank you, Your Worship. Coming back to the notwithstanding clause, which was basically thrown out, I think, as more of a dare to the big city mayors, because, and all of them mayors in Ontario, because everyone is screaming at them to do something to deal with the homelessness situation. And in doing so, the big city mayors and other mayors have responded, and they've said, we demand that you put this notwithstanding clause in place, or you follow through with that. And I think it's a reasonable ask. It's a reasonable ask. At first, the notwithstanding clause was, when it was invoked so many times by Mr. Ford or Premier Ford, people were a little bit upset about that, because it seemed like a very overarching hammer to hit a very small problem. But this is a huge problem. This is an epidemic, and it has to be dealt with. And if this will override the Kitchener-Waterloo ruling, then so be it, because we are stuck. We are at an impasse, and we can't keep doing this anymore. So I'm in. I approve.
If I could just make a comment on this, because the basic premise of the big city mayors support this, that is not true. The big city mayors met, and there's 29 of them.
Yes.
They could not come to a position. The only thing they did come to a position on is on the 3 or 4 things that I just proposed to you in the next motion. And then 13 went out and took their own position away from their own caucus. And now at the same time across Ontario, there are councils saying, why didn't you speak to us? We don't support this. There's also a petition going around to all the councils saying not support this clause. So it's not as simple as just asking for it to be invoked. I think this puts, in general, all these concerns, which I brought to County Council on May the 1st and unanimously supported asking Premier to take the leadership. The MPP said he was going to in August, and that didn't happen.
Nope.
The pressure's out there. The notwithstanding clause is the issue that the big city mayors did not endorse at the end, just a small group of them.
Thank you for that clarification. But as I see that both of your motions are relatively close to each other. So I still agree with Councillor Dennis. This may do something.
Okay, I've got Councillor Dennis and I got Councillor Burrell, then I'll call the question.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Bradley, to everyone. Keep in mind, folks, we're paying what $130,000 a month. I think we're over $500,000, and I'm not sure if that counts or if that number includes everything. But that's an awful lot of money. That's an awful lot of taxpayer money, and especially given the drains on us. Everybody wants money. There's all these various projects that people want money for. We're gonna find that out next Tuesday, and there's Sarnia Lambton has a 9% unemployment rate. That's the highest in Southern Ontario, higher than Windsor's, higher than Chatham-Kent's. We can't afford to be doing this. We really can't. So we can sit here till the cows come home blaming whoever for the reason why this is happening, but the reality is that it's happening, and I have to be on the side of the the taxpayers and the neighbors with the small children and the business people that they're having their lives turned upside down. We just have to put an end to it. We have to make some tough choices.
Okay, I've got Councillor Burrell, then I'm going to call Councillor McRoberts, and I'll call the question.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do not support using the notwithstanding clause. It's obvious, well, over the years, it's mostly been used in Quebec to get around people's rights with regard to languages and things like that. It can be done here too, I guess, but we haven't even tried our own injunction. And my understanding is that the courts just require that you're able to show that the people have a proper place to go. Now, there are some ruffles there. And I think that if the Premier is promoting this, he's just taking the easy way out instead of actually using the provincial legal system to do what is necessary to incarcerate those that need to be incarcerated and to spend the money to provide housing for the people who need housing. So I think this is just gives the Premier a way out without actually doing anything. So I will not be supporting it.
I've got Councillor McRoberts, and I'll call the question.
Thank you through the chair. I'd just like to say, and I know I sound like a broken record, an injunction or the notwithstanding clause or the fences, you know, pushing people along, we're still not dealing with the issue of those people. They're still here. They're not leaving. They may be in smaller groups and easier to manage, but every single little tiny group is upsetting some new neighbors. So we aren't paying to build jails, and we aren't paying to have hospitals or mental clinics or addiction clinics built. So instead of us and our community putting pressure on the taxes, the little bit that we have, the Ontario government's responsible for all of that. And until they will do something about it, every municipality that has these folks, we're just shuffling them around the board and stressing ourselves out and spending our own money. So until we can get it really looked after, like where are they going to go? We're still going to be playing this game and battling it out with each other about what's the next new place to move them. In the meantime, we have upset 75,000 people in our community. Thank you.
Let me call the question. Those in favor of the motion? Burrell, Gillis, Dennis, and Vandenberg. Those opposed? Councillor Boucher, Burrell, McRoberts, Kilner, White, and myself. So the motion's defeated. I have proposed a motion to you which takes all the things the big city mayors agreed to, except for that one thing that was just defeated. And I'm asking if you would pass that, at least to send that on to Queen's Park. So White, Councillor Kilner. Any discussion? All in favor? I'll call the question. In favor, Councillor Boucher, Burrell, McRoberts, Kilner, Vandenberg, myself, White, and Gillis. Those opposed? Councillor Dennis. With that, let's move to the minutes and we can send you home.
I move that the minutes of the October 28th, 2024 regular meeting and October 28th, 2024 closed meeting as printed be adopted.
All in favor? Any urgent matters that haven't been brought forward? Mr. Gillis? Councilor
Thank
Burrell?
you. Thank you, Your Worship. Just as a follow-up to a previous motion that was made and passed by City Council, looking at temporary transitional tiny shelters no bigger than 100 square feet. Yes, I know that this was discussed at the county. I recall when we made that decision to put it to the county that you would report back to us, Mayor Bradley. Unfortunately, we didn't get any report back, but we got a report in the paper. So part of that motion that is still active and on the table was to develop an action plan working collaboratively by concerned members of our community to create an alternate shelter space with low barrier requirements. Now, I know that you've been trying to get something in place at the county for them to implement some low barrier requirements, but here we are, November 18th, We've got Laura Lee emergency shelter, which is not satisfying the needs of the community at all and wreaking havoc with the people in the Laura Lee community. I know that they've been asking for a public meeting. So my question is, seeing as we're all trying to work on the same page here, is there going to be a meeting for the people in the Laura Lee area that have specifically asked for one? And instead of just getting notification from the director of housing at Lambton County, that they are reassuring them with lovely letters.
When I sent out the county's position on the tiny homes, if I recall. Secondly, the request was to the county, and I'm going to be following up on that. I will say one thing. I was out of town last Wednesday, and I was on the call, but I could not get on to speak with the county when it was said that the county had been consulting with the city on Laura Lee and locating it there. Be careful what I say here. We were not consulted.
No.
We found out after the fact. We found out about Central United. So you could help us out today on county council. We found out about that after the fact. We've been told that there are 3 or 4 locations under consideration for this winter. I think we should pass a motion saying Sarnia City Council, I want to talk about notification.
Absolutely.
We should be consulted. And I know the 2 staffs met and they would not give the information about where those sites are. I think we should pass a motion asking the county immediately to consult with City Council on those locations so you can have input on before they occur.
I would make that motion.
I would second.
Okay. Any other comments? Councillor Burrell, Councillor Dennis?
Yes, I would not use the word city council. I would use the word city of Sarnia. The reason being is that if anything that comes to us has to be public.
Right.
And there may be reasons that they don't want it to be public for whatever reason. And I think, I don't know if they can maybe somehow deliver it to us in camera, or certainly if they can talk with our staff who can maybe keep us informed informally. But I think when we use the term city council, I think that creates a legal problem.
I understand where you're coming from as the mover, but what the mayor is suggesting, that by bringing it to city council, it is indeed a public forum.
It should not be in camera.
Absolutely not in camera, because the people want a voice, and we all want to know when these things are going to be sprung on us, because we are dealing with the consequences rather than the county. So I reject that premise. I think that we're moving on the right track here.
Yeah, I think I understand what the councillor is saying, but I would simply say that the city of Sarnia asks, and we ask, this is in progress right now. Like this could happen next week. And I just, again, we weren't notified about Laura Lee. We weren't notified about Central. So we deserve that courtesy. And how they want to communicate it, that's their call. I do have a meeting with the county warden on this issue on, I think it's Friday coming up, and to discuss it. So I'll certainly raise it if you pass this motion. Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Mayor Bradley. As a matter of fact, I gave them quite a talking to actually at the last meeting regarding Laura Lee. I was following up with the petition that you had addressed, and that they made that statement, and that was one of the reasons why I brought the my first motion, is because they made that claim, and they had also said that they didn't need it. They were allowed to put those places typically at faith-based, typically churches, because they were zoned for that sort of thing. But I couldn't agree more that the citizens should know where they're, or like you mentioned, the other church that where the neighbors were blindsided, and the neighbors at Laura Lee were blindsided, and I couldn't agree more. Like, you can't go wrong with transparency at all. Like in real estate, we used to have the saying, disclose, disclose, disclose. You can't go wrong with making people aware. Never at all.
Well, there has been a motion moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? The motion passed. Okay, moving on. Councillor Burrell, you had something?
but not, sorry, it's in the
Okay.
item N. So
Let's move to consent agenda then, Councillor McRoberts.
I move that item A to P listed in the consent agenda be introduced.
Favor. And then Councillor Burrell, you had something from that agenda?
yes, item N is in Nancy. Item N has to do with the downtown committee, and we asked for a report for staff to give us pluses and minuses of setting up committee. To be honest with you, I didn't see any pluses, but on the other hand, I'm aware of what I would consider to be a lot of pluses, especially if you compare to what's happening in Mitton Village, where their committee seems to be doing wonderful things for their area. So I think I'm going to move that we establish a downtown committee with members from the community and perhaps one or two city councillors to deal with downtown matters for recommendation to council, like all committees. And maybe they seem to be talking a lot here with the BIA, but it seems to me the BIA is an issue, but not the only issue that this downtown committee. So anyway, my motion is to establish a downtown committee with people from the downtown area as an appointed committee like our other committees.
For a seconder? Councillor Vandenberg? If the motion passes, I hope it would come back to council so we can look at the mixture of who's there and, landlords, tenants, other parties. And I presume that will happen. So all in favor of the motion? That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Burrell. Councillor McRoberts, take us off the agenda there.
I move items A to P listed in the consent agenda as recommended or approved by this council be adopted.
All in favor? Bylaws.
I move that bylaws 1 through 7 as printed be introduced and be taken as read for the first, second, and third time, and finally passed.
All in favor? I thank everyone for their cooperation today, and let's move us to next Tuesday and the big day, which is budget day.
I move that Sarnia City Council adjourn to the budget deliberation meeting to be held on Tuesday, November 26, 2024, and its next regular meeting to be held on Monday, December 16th, 2024.
All in favor? That's the vote that's always unanimous. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.